It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. Tender, juicy, and its own sauce. Would you look at that? Well, you can't see it, but trust me, it looks delicious. New McCrispy strips, now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Your warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such good work over at 710 Seattle Sports, is going to be joining me. We're going to be chatting with him about what we're all seeing in terms of West Coast landscape in college basketball, getting it on all those conferences, what we saw with Gonzaga having their slip up against St. Mary's, as St. Mary's actually in action on Tuesday, a very rare Tuesday WCC game, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, get a lay of the land in the Pac-12, and take a look at the Mountain West as well, as we've got a lot of good Mountain West action for Tuesday, so getting a West Coast roundup from Curtis in segment number 2, and the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really didn't get in any of these Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Well, if you were on the Miami Hurricanes, it was not such a fun day for them, as they fall by a count of 60-38, as Miami was just stuck in the mud all night long. This is a Virginia team that has been vastly different with regards to their defense at home rather than in a road/neutral court environment. And for Miami, a pretty atrocious 2 of 20 3-point shooting expose in this one. Meanwhile, Virginia was able to go 5 of 11 from 3-point range. Reese Beekman chips in there 16 points, 7 assists. It's a Virginia team that turned the ball over just 3 times in this one. Miami 11 turnovers, and Miami actually won the rebound battle 35-34. No Chad Omier, he came to play, 11 points, 13 rebounds, but unfortunately, the rest of the team, they weren't able to give you too much of anything, so that was a little bit of an issue. Now, up there in the Southland, you've got one of your best cover 8 teams in all of college basketball in Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They were not in action on Monday, but they still sit as your second best cover 8 team in all of college basketball at 14-4 against the spread. But out there in the Southland, you did see McNeese be able to restore order. I know that they lost about a week ago against Southeast Louisiana, and they just absolutely pounded the tar out of Texas A&M Commerce. 77-50 won the final in this one, as for McNeese, they were able to go 8 of 18 from 3-point range. Commerce just 5 of 22 from the outside. And for this McNeese team, they were able to have Shahada Wells go off in this game for 16 points, 6 boards. He was able to shoot 2 of 3 from 3-point range. McNeese is able to win that turnover battle by a count of 15-6 as well. So all in all, a nice cruiser of a win there. Not sure why Delaware was bet from being a favorite to being the underdog, but they were able to get it done against Delaware State by a count of 75-71. Howard had full control of this game, and it slipped slide away a little bit from them in this one, but Bryce Harris, he was able to go off for a nice 23-point performance, so that was a good win if you had it for the old Howard Bison. But the best team out there in the MEAC at being able to make you money this far this season has been NC Central, but they had their game go to overtime against Morgan State. For those of us that had the under, this was very brutal, as this was looking like it was going to get there very easily, 65-65 at the end of regulation, and for NC Central, they could not hold on, 79-72 the final, and here's why NC Central lost the game. They went 11 of 20 at the free throw line, while losing the turnover battle 10-6, and they lost the rebound battle 45-42, so that was a little bit rough for them. You did have a 23-point expose from Will Thomas on the side of Morgan State. Morgan State was also able to have Cameron Hobbs go 3 of 8 from 3-point range. So NC Central, they had a little bit of a rough one on this one, but South Carolina State now also up to 12-7-1 against the spread. They take it to compensate by a count of 77-65. Depending upon your closing number, this was between 12 and 12.5. You either got a cover or you got a refund, as this was one where if you had South Carolina State, you fully deserved to get to the window. They were up 70-50 with about 4 minutes and change remaining, and then all of a sudden compensate, a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball with regards points scored on a per possession basis, was able to make a little bit of a run towards the end of the game, and of course, compensate, they fouled with about 19 seconds remaining, down by a count of 10 points. So that was a very harebrained and wild game, to say the least. Right now, as I do this podcast, as the Greg Peterson experience is from midnight to 3 Eastern Time. That would be 9 to midnight Pacific. So I do have to record this a little bit in advance. But Arkansas Pine Bluff, who has been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball, they entered into the night having it 12 overs, 4 unders, and a push. Not looking so great for them against Prairie View. 37-29. Prairie View currently up at the half. That was a closing total that you were able to find in the neighborhood of about a 160. So that's not looking too tremendous. What is looking pretty tremendous, though, is if you had the under in Kansas versus Kansas State. That was my DK Network write-up for Monday. And right now, Kansas in the lead, 32-30. We'll clean this one up on the podcast tomorrow. But just a very ugly offense with Kansas State going 1 of 6 at the free throw line in the first half. For the Jayhawks, you did have a pretty stellar first half from Hunter Dickinson. Pair of assists, 4 boards, 7 points. So he was able to do a relatively solid job. And for Kansas State, you had Cam Carter keeping them lively, 8 points, 4 rebounds, and that one was a pretty barren day in college basketball on Monday, but you did see Idaho go on the road and also take down Sacramento State as a bit of an underdog as well. So if you were able to get that money line cash, good on you for that. And if you are taking a look at college basketball overall, what we are noticing is that the home underdogs, they're having a little bit of a rough time of it. This does not include those home teams that are like unranked versus a ranked road team where you're like laying 2 points with the home team. These are actual underdogs. So do want to make that just clear. But overall for the season, home underdogs, 487, 511, and 17 against the spread. That's a 48.8% hit rate. Overs still doing very solid. 1,919 overs to 1,813 unders. That's a hit rate of about 51.4%. If you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, overs are hitting at about 51.5%. 163 overs, 154 unders. Meanwhile, home underdogs, 52, 50, and 1 against the spread in the science span. And home teams overall hitting at 46.5% over the last 7 days. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Monday. Coming up next, we're going to be chatting a little bit about the West Coast, the Mountain West, the West Coast Conference, and so much more with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports Radio on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Curtis Rogers. He does great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at so many different things. When it's in season, he does great work with the Seattle Seahawks, along with the pre- and post-game hosting of the Seattle Mariners. This time of year, I know that he's in full-fledged college basketball mode as well. For Curtis, there's not anything that gets by him. He is the man out there in the Pacific Northwest, taking a look at all those great teams and great leagues. And you're able to follow him on Twitter/X at A Kid from Kent all together. That's also his Instagram handle. And Curtis, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, always a pleasure hopping on with you, and we are in the thick of conference play. It is one of the great times in college basketball. Always seeing all these teams get knocked off on the road because it's so hard to win on the road in college basketball. And this year especially has kind of really reinforced that opinion. I mean, we're seeing teams get knocked off left and right, ranked teams losing to non-ranked teams in these true road tests. It's a lot of fun. It creates for a very chaotic time. Right now is, we're still quite a ways away. We're still about a month away from conference tournament play. So a lot of jockeying for position going on right now.
There's no question about it. And the West Coast landscape is very interesting with regards to college basketball, because I think that there's very little debate that among the West Coast teams, this is the Mountain West, this is the Pac-12, WCC, list goes on and on. Arizona is that supreme team right now, but they've been looking a little bit wobbly as well. But the team that's really looking wobbly is Gonzaga. Over the weekend, they had something very uncharacteristic happen. They lose at the Kennel to St. Mary's, and it's two-parted. One, what do we make out of Gonzaga right now that they've got 6 losses? And 2, what do we also make out of St. Mary's, a team that looked horrible to begin the season, but here in WCC play, they've looked like a bulldozer.
Yeah, St. Mary's 9-0 in WCC play. I know you and I, Greg, we talked about them right at the start of the season when they were losing some pretty winnable games in the non-conference slate, and we were like, I don't see it out of this team. I really don't. And then all of a sudden now it looks like they're going to be running away with the WCC regular season title. I'm looking, though, at this conference, Greg, and I'm not really seeing a multi-bid league at this point. Gonzaga, I would not have them in my field of 68 if the season were to end today. They have a huge, huge test this week on the road against Kentucky at Rupp Arena. About as big of a must-win in early February as you're going to get. I mean, I don't see a path to the NCAA tournament outside of winning the conference tournament for Gonzaga right now without a win against Kentucky. So I'm looking at that game, and the Zags have to have it. I don't think they are going to get it because they just have simply not shown up this year against the teams that they've needed wins against, especially St. Mary's over the weekend. Really weird to see the Kennel throwing things on the court after the game. Just a bizarre atmosphere over there in Spokane. I'm kind of stunned. It feels like this Gonzaga team, we may see their streak of NCAA tournament berths come to an end this season unless they are able to really turn it on. Now, not to say that I don't think they're capable of winning the WCC tournament. I think they're very capable of doing that. But, they have had a really hard time this year kind of meeting the moment. And in conference tournament play, you have to be on your game every single night because you're playing back-to-back-to-back, potentially 4 back-to-backs in a row. Gonzaga is so used to getting that automatic berth into the semifinal with the way the WCC tournament is set up. That probably won't exist this season. So they're going to have a really tough road ahead of them if they want to get back to the NCAA tournament.
Yep, that is certainly going to be rough for them. And also, what do we make out of San Francisco in that conference as well? Because for San Francisco, they very nearly won at the Kennel. They've actually got a nice win on the resume against Minnesota, but they also had 2 tough games against a Pacific team that has been one of the worst in all of college basketball as well. And they've been a very befuddling and confusing team themselves.
They really have. And I think they're another team that can really kind of throw themselves into the fray. Now, their 2 conference losses are against St. Mary's and Gonzaga. So that's why I kind of have them on that second tier of potential contenders in the WCC. You look at the play this season of Jonathan Mogbo. He has been just a beast. 15-10, shooting about 70% from the field. I mean, that is a guy that is playing just incredible basketball this season for San Francisco, has really been an anchor for them defensively and then on the boards as well. A game-changing presence for them in their front court. Really fun player to watch. I look at their schedule that lies ahead. I mean, they only have one more game against St. Mary's and Gonzaga apiece. The rest are pretty winnable games for them, I would imagine. They do have a tough test against Pepperdine coming up here on Thursday of this week. But San Francisco, I don't have as much confidence in them getting to the NCAA tournament as I would St. Mary's and Gonzaga right now. But would I be stunned to see them get there? Would I be stunned to see them go on a run? Probably not. I think they are a very interesting team to watch as this WCC race gets cloudier and cloudier by the day.
Yeah, it is getting very cloudy. And for Santa Clara, they knock off 3 Pac-12 teams. They also knock off Gonzaga at home as well. And then they took that horrible loss against St. Mary's the first time around, looked a little bit better last week when they played them as well. So, the WCC is very much a fascination right now. As joining me on the show, we do have Curtis Rogers, who does absolutely amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports, and he's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And something that I was alluding to a little bit earlier is the fact that out there on the West Coast, I don't think that it's really up for debate that Arizona is that top team, even though they have taken a few head-scratching losses. But what do we make at this point out of the rest of the Pac-12? Because all of a sudden, UCLA is starting to pick up some wins. USC has been one of the biggest disappointments in all of college basketball. Colorado and Utah, it's really hard to make heads or tails out of them. And when it comes to the Pac-12, dare I say that you might be looking at like a 2-bid league this year with how bad everything has been outside of Arizona.
Yeah, it has been very crazy in the Pac-12, very topsy-turvy. Even Arizona at one point, they were kind of in the middle of everything in the Pac-12 standings. Now they've rattled off a couple wins in a row, picking up a huge road win against Oregon last weekend, especially coming off of that inexplicable loss to Oregon State at the buzzer. that still made no sense. We're still a week removed from that. I kind of look at that result, it's just like, how the heck did that happen? Now, earlier in conference play, Arizona lost a road game to Washington State, which under normal circumstances would be big cause for concern for Arizona. But Washington State, Greg, they're making a charge here in the Pac-12. They are only a half game back of Arizona. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season, especially after all the talent that they lost after, getting picked apart by the transfer portal, NBA draft declarations, what have you. The Cougs have really kind of set themselves apart right now. I look at them behind Arizona right now as maybe the second strongest team in the conference. Kyle Smith has done a tremendous job coaching that team up. They had a huge win on Saturday against Washington, arch rivals. That rivalry is even more bitter now that Washington State's kind of being left in the dust as Washington goes to the Big Ten. But the Cougs right now, Greg, if you're looking for a second best team in the Pac-12, I'm looking at them. I'm looking at maybe Utah, but Utah, look, they're 6-0 at the Huntsman Center. Sure, they're 0-5 away from it. And not only are they 0-5, they're getting blown out in those 5 losses. So if I'm going to say there's a second best team behind Arizona right now, Greg, it's crazy to say it, but it might be Washington State.
Whew, I mean, man, it is right now absolutely insane. The entire West Coast basketball landscape, I feel like, is turned on its head. And if I'm looking at the top conference out west, I really do think that it's the Mountain West, a conference that is going to be in full force on Tuesday. Now, granted, really other than what we're going to be seeing Nevada versus Utah State and Boise State versus Colorado State, you don't have a lot of big tests. Wyoming, they are going to be playing host to New Mexico, and as we know, Wyoming is a tough place to play, but I'd be surprised if New Mexico stubs their toe there. San Diego State has to go on the road, but this is an Air Force team that, unless if they're playing against UNLV, they really haven't been able to provide a lot of resistance. But what do you make out of this Mountain West right now? Because I do look at that Nevada versus Utah State game as being a critical one if the Mountain West wants to get north of 4 bids into the NCAA tournament. And all of a sudden, this Boise State team is looking like one of those teams that's just pesky and that you don't want to play.
Yeah, they've won a couple in a row here. I think they have really looked good here in Mountain West play. And considering the quality of the league right now, that's a really good 7-2 start on their resume in conference play. You mentioned it, maybe a 4-bid league, maybe around that number. I look at Utah State, Boise State, New Mexico, San Diego State. I mean, yeah, those teams are all very deserving. Nevada, if they can kind of pick it up a little bit more here in conference play, they had such a great non-conference schedule, going 13-1 in non-conference play. If they can kind of pick it up here and pick up some quality wins to round out the regular season in the Mountain West, you could easily make the case as this being a 5-bid league. Even Colorado State has a case to be made at 17-5 overall, 5-4 in conference play. This is the best conference out west right now, and it is wild to say, especially because of how great Gonzaga has been historically. The Pac-12 being what it is with incredible programs like UCLA and Arizona, even Oregon to a lesser extent. But no, this Mountain West Conference, Greg, and we saw it on Saturday too with Utah State, San Diego State, the Aztecs picking up that victory. That was a really fun game to watch on national television as well. This Mountain West Conference is a lot of fun this season, a lot of really good teams, and it's definitely the best one out west.
Oh, it certainly is, and I'm going to be so fascinated to see what we do get on Tuesday out of these teams. As joining me on the show, we do have Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And who would you say is that top team out in the Mountain West right now? Because we did see New Mexico get off to that tremendous start, but they lost at home to Boise State last week. Utah State had to take it to them by a San Diego State team that they've been a little bit wobbly throughout the season as well. And then you got Colorado State, who their defense is really a little bit lackluster, but their offense is so explosive. I think out of really those top 4 teams, it's just really hard to pick one because they all have different fortes, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see how these teams go up against one another in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking at Utah State's schedule that's coming up. It does not get easy. Nevada, Boise State, you mentioned Wyoming, how tough it is to play in Laramie at over 7,000 feet elevation, at Colorado State, San Diego State at home. I mean, if Utah State is truly the best team in the Mountain West, which record-wise and standing-wise they are, then we're really going to find out about them over the course of the next 2 weeks. The San Diego State game, the rematch of that game that was played on Saturday, that's coming up on February 20th. That's going to be in Logan, Utah, which is one of the most difficult places to play their student section, you know it, Greg, is just one of the craziest atmospheres in all of college basketball. I like the Aggies. I think they have what it takes to win this Mountain West Conference. I'm going to go with them right now as the best team in the Mountain West Conference. Osivor has been phenomenal this season, averaging nearly 20 and 10. Just really, really been such a game changer, really at the front of the Mountain West Player of the Year race. He has been a lot of fun to watch. This Utah State team, Greg, I think they do make it to the NCAA tournament. We're talking about potentially a team that could win a few games, maybe make a run to the second weekend, maybe even further. Heck, I mean, we saw it last year in the Mountain West. San Diego State made it all the way to the national championship game. So this conference has a recent track record of success in the NCAA tournament. I would expect that to happen again here in 2024.
Yep, I would expect that to happen as well. And for the Mountain West, it was for the longest time that they couldn't bust through in the NCAA tournament. Well, they busted through, and they busted through in full force last season. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I do think that we're in for some tremendous basketball in the Mountain West the next month or so. As joining me on the show, we do have Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports on the Greg Peters, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And with regards to what we're taking a look at nationally as well, because we've been hitting upon a lot of these West Coast teams, is there a team or two that you just take a look at and they really caught your eye over the last week or two, whether it be to the positive or the negative? Because we had a really insane Saturday in college basketball, lots of rivalries. You know that it's a good weekend of college basketball when you got Duke versus North Carolina, but is there a team or two that really has stood out to you last week or two that is really now coming onto your radar, whether that be to the positive or the negative?
The one team near the top of the rankings, I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say the Kansas, with what they have been able to do in their wins this season, have been pretty impressive, beating Oklahoma at home and then on Saturday beating number 4 Houston and really just kind of cruising by them, 78-65. You know, they've got maybe the most impressive win this season, beating UConn earlier in the season. They've beaten Tennessee. This Kansas team, even though they have, 4 losses on the season, I would write them in Sharpie as a Final Four lock this season. I think they have just been so phenomenal in their biggest test this year. Losing to Marquette, pretty much the only black eye on their resume. West Virginia, that was another kind of inexplicable loss. But I think this Jayhawks team has what it takes to not just make it to the Final Four, but to cut down the nets this coming season. And then a team that maybe not a lot of people have their eye on right now, but in the Big Sky Conference, Eastern Washington doing exactly what they did a year ago, off to an 8-1 start in conference play. One of my very favorite names in college basketball, Greg. I think you know where I'm going with this one. Cedric Coward. Not playing cowardly, not at all. He has been phenomenal for Eastern Washington this season. And David Riley, their head coach, I would expect him to be in play for some bigger jobs here. I mean, he's got over a 600 win percentage as the Eagles head coach, 35-12 in Big Sky play in his 2+ seasons at the helm at Eastern Washington. I know we talked about Washington losing to Washington State earlier. I mean, Mike Hopkins, I have a really hard time seeing him coming back next season, especially considering the expectations of this year and how the Huskies have really faltered here. David Riley's name could very well be in play for that Washington job if it opens up.
Oh, absolutely. I will say, if you're looking at best names out there in the Big Sky Conference, though, nothing beats Money Williams of Montana. Now, when your first name is Money, you know that it's got to be good, but this man's name should be Money instead of Curtis, because Curtis, you do such a tremendous job in everything that you do. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball, I know you're very much involved, not just with taking a look at like Washington, the Pac-12, what have you, but you do take a look at Eastern Washington. You are taking a look at Seattle out there in the WAC conference. Hopefully they can make a run, perhaps be able to give some charge to Grand Canyon to be able to try to make the NCAA tournament out here in lovely Las Vegas in a month or so. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, that's Seattle U team picking up an over Grand Canyon. Only one of 2 losses the Grand Canyon has. But yeah, you can follow along on Twitter and Instagram at A Kid From Kent. SeattleSports.com is the place where you want to be, where we've got all sorts of content right there. It's been Coaching Search Central up here. Baseball season's getting underway soon, spring training, but college basketball, we are in the thick of it. Huge matchup this past weekend, the Apple Cup of Hoops between Washington State and Washington. Cougs picking up that big victory. Plenty of reaction to that. Greg, it is always a pleasure talking hoops with you, especially this time of year, and look forward to doing it again real soon, because it gets even bigger. With every single week, it gets even bigger and better across college basketball. and this is my favorite time of year.
Oh, this is one of my favorite times of the year, as well as Curtis does such excellent work taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins the show, he lends absolutely impeccable insights, much like today. So big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Beast Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we eat some big shots. And we're back in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beast Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Curtis Rogers. He does such good work over at 710 Seattle Sports, taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love, and really anything Pacific Northwest. He's got you covered. Everything from the Seattle Kraken and the West Coast hockey landscape to the NFL to baseball, college basketball. You name it, he does it. Every single time he joins this podcast, lends tremendous insights as well. So, big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. There's nothing on the extra games board, so this is essentially time order. So I keep things nice, clean, and easy and unconvoluted, which is what we like to see. So let's get things started with 601, 602 on the betting board. Rutgers, it's a road face-off against Maryland, and Maryland is a favorite of 8 points. Total on this game, anywhere between a 125.5 and pretty much just 125.5 across the board. We're seeing one straight 126, but that said, even at the 125.5, we're going to go under. I did set my total at a 125, and just because these two offenses have been really rough to say the least, Rutgers being the most rough out of these offenses, they are outside the top 275 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Now, if there is one thing that can ruin this thing, it is the fact that Rutgers, who is a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, they are really giving it up much more when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. They are giving up nearly 20.9 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot record environment rather than when they are at home. But neither of these teams are really able to put the ball in the basket from three-point range. Maryland's gotten a little bit better with this regard, but they're still a team that's shooting well below 32% from three-point range and relying upon Jameer Young to do it all for this team. Jameer Young has been tremendous. 21 points, 4 assists, steal and a half per contest, shoots 34.5% from three, and then Dante Scott is able to give you 11 points, 5 boards. He shoots about 35.5% from three-point range, but as a whole, Maryland shooting 29.5% from three-point range in a game that's probably not going to be featuring a lot of possessions as well. Rutgers has actually been playing a little bit faster this year. They're within the top 150 with regards to total possessions per game. This is still a rather slow, grimy Maryland team, though. Maryland 289th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Now the battle down low is going to be interesting. You've got Julian Reese for this Maryland bunch, 13 points, 9 boards, a steal, and 2.2 blocks per contest. Cliff Amarui doesn't do as much in terms of being able to generate the steals, but he gives you 3 blocks, about 9 boards, 11 points per contest. So do like what I've been seeing out of him. Question becomes, can you get a little bit of a spark out of Jeremiah Williams? He came back in the team's last game. He had been out all season, transferred from Temple, and he had really been out the previous season as well. Last we saw him in the American, he was averaging about 9 points, 4.5 assists per contest, and Rutgers could use that spark. They are shooting about 28% from 3, 65% at the free throw line, with Andre Hyatt right now leading the way with about 11.5 points per contest. You're expecting a little bit more out of Derek Simpson, who's only been able to give you 10 points per contest. Noah Fernandez has been shooting below 30% from three-point range, so these teams have been rather rough with regards to their offense. I just don't know if Maryland is going to be able to do enough to be able to break away and be able to cover this sort of a number. They're a little bit better at the free throw line, but it's not like they're overly trustworthy as well. We'll say this for Maryland, they are generating about 17.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than a roadside shoot court environment. But that said, I think that you're in for a little bit of a low-scoring slog, and I do think that Rutgers going to be able to do a solid job of being able to, at the very least, hold in there on the glass with regards to this Rutgers team and their rebound rate. They're currently about 204th in all of college basketball, but Amarui is a nice sort of deodorant to that. Maryland is about 100th with this regard, so I did set my line at 7, going to be willing to take 8 with Maryland, set my total at 125, so you're at the 125.5 to 126. Also diving under. 603, 604 on the betting board. St. John's plays us to DePaul. DePaul is a underdog of 20 points. So on this game, 147. And I said St. John's is a 23-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's just so sad looking at this DePaul team. They're outside the top 275 with regards to points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're one of the worst rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, as they don't have a single guy on the roster. Let's give you north of 4 rebounds per game. Chico Carter has really been able to give this team a spark when he's been out there, but now their top scorer, and Carter has been able to give you 12 points per contest. He's been missing due to injury. I mean, it's just all sorts of bad. You've got one bright spot in that Jalen Terry shooting 49% from 3. He's been able to come back, and he's been able to give the team 8+ points in each of the last 5 games, but really past that, you don't have a lot going for the team as they're turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest. Really, the only thing they're not in the bottom 100 of in all of college basketball is free throw shooting at 73.5%. Meanwhile, for the St. John's team, it has been a little bit wobbly, but this team responds really well to playing at home. This St. John's team, overall, with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, they're hovering right around 105th, but they're giving up 15.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home, and they'll certainly dominate this game down low. Joel Soriano being able to give you 16 points, 9.5 boards per contest. It's actually shooting 58.5% from 3. Obviously a very small sample size, but Dennis Jenkins has done a solid job, giving you 5.5 assists, and has been cutting down on the turnovers with about 2.5 turnovers per game. They go up against a DePaul team that they don't do a great job of being able to generate turnovers either. There's just really nothing that this DePaul team is doing well. For DePaul, they have scored 68 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. They've given up 85+ points in 3 of their last 4. For the St. John's bunch, it certainly has been grody in terms of their defense. 73+ points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that this could be a time where DePaul is able to find a little bit more scoring. Jeremiah Oden will give you about 9 points, 4 boards, and Deshaun Nelson has a little bit of versatility, but this is just a DePaul team that has quit on the season, and I mean, frankly, to start with, they had not a lot of talent to be able to help them out to begin with, so now you've got a lack of motivation for a team that, well, they really needed all the motivation that they could. It's a very, very brutal circumstance here. I do think that St. John's is going to absolutely lay it on them. I said St. John's is a 23-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and when it comes to the total, I set mine at a 147. Right now, pretty much across the board, we are sitting at a 147, so in a little bit more of wait-and-see mode. We were seeing a little bit earlier some varying numbers. I was seeing a tad bit earlier, 146 after. If we could get down there, we'll be looking at the over. If we get past 147, that'll be a play for me on the under to go along with laying this big number with St. John. 605, 606 on the betting board. Ole Miss hits the road face-off against South Carolina. South Kakalaki is a 3.5-point favorite. Your total on this game is 138. Set South Carolina is a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. At what point do people finally start to realize, hey, the South Carolina team is for real? And I thought that they were going to be dead last in this conference. I had no expectations for them whatsoever, but this team is just so well-rounded, and it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts unit. You don't have a single guy in this roster that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, yet they're a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate. You don't have a guy really other than Michi Johnson that can go into takeover mode with regards to their offense, yet they do a solid job of just being able to put the ball in the bucket. They're a top 95 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and just everyone knows their role. You've got someone like a BJ Mack, really the only guy at the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. He's able to supply you about 12 points, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and you just have a lot of those guys. And then Talon Cooper does a nice job of being able to keep things very clean. He gives you 4 assists, so a little bit over a turnover per contest, shoots in the high 30s, low 40s from 3-point range, with being able to supply you about 9 to 10 points per game. And this is an Ole Miss team that, despite the fact that you've got a pair of giants of the earth, and Jamarian Sharp, coupled with Musa Cisse, these 2 guys have been able to combine for about 9 rebounds per game. They've got a rebound rate that's outside the top 150 in all of college basketball now. Cisse and Sharp do combine for about 4 blocks per contest, and this is a Ole Miss team that's really able to light it up from 3-point range. Just shooting 38.7% from 3-point range among their top 6 scorers. All but one of them shoot at least 36.8% from 3-point range. That lone exception is Allen Flanagan, who's been able to give you about 15 points, 6.8 rebounds per game, and this team does a good job of being able to facilitate by committee. Each of their top 4 scorers in Flanagan, Jamal Murray, Jalen Brakefield, along with Matthew Morrell, they all give you at least 2.5 assists per contest, with Morrell being your top scorer with 17 points per game. But it is an Ole Miss team that I feel like they're really starting to get figured out on the defensive side of things. This team has now given up 82+ points in 3 out of their last 5 games, so that, in my opinion, is a little bit of cause for concern. Actually, 4 out of their last 6 games, so been even more grody than that. And typically, Chris Beard's teams, they do a really good job of being able to eat it up. But you look at this Mississippi team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Right now, they're about 145th in all of college basketball. When they do leave home, they're giving up about 15.5 points more per 100 possessions. Meanwhile, this is a South Carolina team that they're not going to generate a billion turnovers or anything like that, but 32nd with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Got a lot of nice ancillary pieces, like when he's been out there, Miles Sute has been dealing with a little bit of an injury. Jacoby Wright just doing a good job keeping things clean, not turning it over, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. I do think that this steady Eddie South Carolina team going to be able to get it done. They're in the bottom 75, South Carolina is, in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that they're going to slow this game down just a little bit, but with the way that Ole Miss has been getting carved up on defense, I do think that that'll allow this over to hit, along with perhaps some late game filling. As I set my number at 5, I'm going to be willing to lay with South Carolina. And here at the 138, look it over, I set my total at 139. 607, 608 on the bang board. Central Michigan, it's a road face-off against Akron. Akron is a favorite of 14.5 points. Total on this game is 133 with Akron. I made them a favorite of 13.5 points. So here at the 14.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Central Michigan. Central Michigan certainly has its warts, but I like what Anthony Pritchard is able to bring to the table. He's done a good job giving the team right in the neighborhood about 14.5 to 15 points. Throws in there 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists per contest. It is a Central Michigan team that is well outside the top 250 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but they've been able to get a little bit of a spark out of some of their ancillary pieces, as Aiden Rubio has now been able to give you about 7 points. He shoots in the low 40s from three-point range. Derek Butler, he's really emerged for this team, giving the team a grand total of 35 points in their last 3 games, shooting down 43.8% from three-point range. And it is a Central Michigan team that, while they're not amazing with regards to their defense, a big reason why they're outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, this team has been able to do a little bit better job holding up there. They have now crept into the top 200 with regards to their points allowed on a per possession basis. Now with this Akron team, they are now in the top 55 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Akron, this has been an offense that has really been able to get hyped up ever since you got back in the fold Ali. And Ali has been able to give you 15 points per contest, but really has only shot about 30 or so percent from three-point range. But despite that, his presence has really been able to help out this Akron team, as Akron has now been able to exceed the 76-point plateau in 7 out of their last 9 games. You've got Enrique Freeman, who's absolutely dominating down low, 18.5 points, 12.9 rebounds per game. That leads the country with regards to rebounds per game, a block and a half per contest as well. For an Akron team that has crept into the top 75 with regards to their rebound rate, this is an Akron team that, on top of that, last time they gave up more than 71 points in a game. You have to go all the way back to January 9th against Ball State. So they really did a nice job of being able to control things there. They're in the bottom 75 in terms of total possessions per game, and even though they don't necessarily have that one true go-to point guard, Caleb Thornton has done a nice job being able to keep this offense clean. He only gives you about 4 points per contest, but throwing out 2.8 assists to about 1.3 turnovers per game. But this is a Central Michigan team that has been okay at being able to come up with a few turnovers. And for the Central Michigan team, they have played each of their last 2 games that have went to double overtime. So if you look at regulation and regulation only, this team has now given up 63 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. That should be able to keep them snug in this matchup, and I do think that that's going to allow for a little bit of a lower scoring game, though I do think that we've won a little bit too low, because even though Akron is slow, they've really been one of the more efficient offenses in all of college basketball over the last month or so. So I did set my total at a 137.5. I'm going to be taking a look at the total over. On top of that, you do have a Central Michigan team that has been having a tough time on the interior. They're actually 33rd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that's not necessarily the forte of Akron. So looking at the over, and at 14 plus, take a look at the points with Central Michigan. 609, 610 on the betting board. Indiana, it's a road face-off against Ohio State. The Ohio State University does find themselves as a 6-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 145. I said Ohio State as a 6-point favorite myself, so we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement here. Right now, a lot of the 6s have some juice on it, and we did see this number at a 5.5 in a few places early on. If we could get back to a 5.5, would be willing to lay with Ohio State. This Indiana team just flat out is not playing any defense whatsoever, and I do recognize that this is an Ohio State team that they're not without their warts on the defensive side of things, but at the very least, they're not 214th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is an Ohio State team that is more around 157th, and Ohio State does play quite a bit better when they are at home. They are giving up about 12.4 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot-record environment. They go up against an Indiana team that, despite the fact that they've got Malik Renew and Khalil Ware down low, 2 giants, 2 guys that have been able to combine for 14-plus rebounds per game, they still have a rebound rate that's outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. Ohio State is in the top 100 with that regard, as they've been able to get good production out of Felix Opara down low, 2.5 blocks, 7 rebounds per game. You've got a pair of guys in the backcourt, Roddy Gale along with Bruce Thornton, that have been able to combine for about 29.5 points, 7.5 assists. Neither of these guys really shoot it well from three. As a whole, it's an Ohio State team that does shoot about 34.3% from three-point range, but they get to go up against an Indiana team that's about 212th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and for Ohio State, this team has really been getting carved up from three-point range, 293rd in all of college basketball in this regard, but it is an Indiana team that, even though they're versatile big men, and Ware along with Renew have actually shot it quite well from three-point range. You've got these two guys combined shoot about 42% from three. Their actual backcourt has not been good from distance. Trey Galloway is only shooting 27.5% from distance, giving you 10.5 points, 4 assists per contest. Xavier Johnson has just been all over the place this year and has been dealing with quite a bit of injury. He might not even be able to go in this game, as he's turned the ball over about 2 times for every 2 assists per game, so that's not necessarily too terrific out there. Mackenzie Mbakmo just feels like a little bit of a misfit part as well. 11 points, 4 rebounds per game, so it's been all over the place for this Indiana team, and for Indiana, just been a case for the defense. It has been inconsistent to say the least. In their last 5 games, they have given up 87, 91, 70, 68, and 85 points. Meanwhile, you've got an Ohio State team that they themselves have now allowed at least 79 points at each of their last 4 games. For Ohio State, to the credit of this team, they have been relatively consistent with regards to their offense. They have gotten past the 75-point plateau in 3 of their last 5 games, and last time these two teams played, Indiana was able to get a win at home by a count of 71-65 in that game. Ohio State just 7 of 27 from 3. Indiana won 5 of 12 from distance, and Indiana only had 4 turnovers in that game, but Ohio State won the rebound battle by 22. I think that we're going to see a little bit of a different game. Ohio State is not going to win that rebound battle by 22. They're also not going to lose the turnover battle by 10, and I do think that getting this game back in the state of Ohio going to be beneficial for the Buckeyes, and I do think that they hit more shots at home, so I did set my total at a 148 here. At the 145, going to be taking a look at the over, despite the fact that you do have a Ohio State team outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, and willing to lay up to 5.5 with the Buckeyes. 6-11, 6-12 on the betting board. Ball State plays us Ohio. Ohio is a 1.5 point road favorite. Total on this game is 148. I did set the Ohio Bobcats as a 1.5 point underdog. I'm going to be looking at Ball State right on the money line. Now, when it comes to this Ball State team, defense has not necessarily been the forte of this team. 276th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but sound like they're going up against some amazing Ohio defense either. Ohio is about 174th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for this Ohio bunch, the big question mark you have with the team is, what are they going to be able to get down low? Elmore James is really the lone guy on the roster that has been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per contest. Ohio 216th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. This is a Ball State team as clocking in more around 133rd with this regard, and for Ball State, they're going to have the best player out there on the floor. That would be Bashir Jihad, who's been able to supply 8 boards, 19.5 points, and is shooting 40% from three-point range. He's been able to give the team 8+ rebounds in each of the last 4 games as well, so I really like the way that he's been able to emerge. Meanwhile, for this Ohio bunch, you do have a pair of guys in Jalen Hunter along Sharif Mitchell that have been able to combine for about 27.5 points per contest. Hunter is able to supply you with about 5 assists, a steal and a half per contest. Mitchell only shoots about 33% from 3, while Hunter shoots below 30% from 3. Yeah, for Ohio, they're only turned the ball over about 9.8 times per contest. They're shooting 36% from three-point range, so they've been able to do a good job there, and this is an Ohio team that, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, are only scoring about 3.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they do leave home, but do have a Ball State team that has been able to score about 10.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment, and this is really going to come down to the three-point arc, because Ball State, they have really been giving it up from three-point range, but at the same time, this Ball State team is 23rd in all of college basketball with regards to three-point shooting percentage, shooting 40% from three-point range. Meanwhile, this is an Ohio bunch that, as a whole, they're shooting about 35.5% from three-point range in a roadside shoot court environment, but the problem that you do have for this Ohio team is that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot well over 34% from three-point range away from home. I do think that allows Ball State in a nip-and-tuck game to be able to claw this one out. I did set Ball State as 1.5 point home favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line, and with regards to the total, I set mine at a 147.5. You do have an Ohio team that has been quite a bit better on defense this season than a season ago, and you take a look at this Ohio team recently, 70 points or fewer surrendered in each of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, for Ball State, they themselves have now given up 71 points or fewer in regulation, because in that game go to overtime against Miami of Ohio. 72 points or fewer have been surrendered in 4 out of their last 5 games. So going to be taking a look at the under, and Ball State on the money line. 613, 614 on the betting board. Bowling Green plays those to Buffalo. Buffalo is a underdog of 13 points. So on this game, 149. I did set Buffalo as a 12.5 point underdog. Here at the 13, I'm going to be willing to take those points. It's a Bowling Green team that is playing much more how Todd Simon wants to. And Todd Simon, he comes over from Southern Utah, was very much an up-tempo coach, and we're seeing that reflect upon this Bowling Green team. As Bowling Green, they have now been able to register at least 76 points in 5 out of their last 6 games. As a matter of fact, they got to at least 76 points in all but 2 out of their last 11 games. So this team has really been able to hype it up on offense. Marcus Hill is their main man, being able to supply 21.5 points, 2.5 assists. Doesn't shoot it great from 3-point range, but Bowling Green, they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. They've got 4 separate guys. They're able to give you double figures, and they go up against a Buffalo team in which they do one thing okay, and that's be able to hit the glass. As you've got Janavius Smith, who's been able to give you about 9 point signboards and actually shoots north of 40% from 3-point range for this team. Problem is, really nobody else on this roster is able to shoot threes. This Buffalo team turning the ball over north of 15 times per contest. Their 3-point shooting percentage, that is currently clocking in at about 26.3% from the outside. Cy Chapman is able to give you about 6 rebounds per contest, and Isaiah Adams has some versatility, 3.5 assists, 12.5 points per contest, but this team really doesn't have much of a backcourt. They're relying upon the freshman and Anquan Bolden Jr. to be able to help them out. Meanwhile, for Bowling Green, they should be able to do a solid job down low. They're about 135th in the country with regards to rebound rate, having Jason Spurgeon give some versatility, 11.5 points, 6 boards, hitting some threes, and then Rashawn Agee is able to give you 9 boards, 12.5 points per contest. With this Bowling Green team, they're not amazing at being able to generate turnovers, but Buffalo, it doesn't matter who they're playing against. They just can't hold on to the ball, and for this Buffalo team, it has been all sorts of bad in terms of this offense. They have scored fewer than 70 points, and now each of their last 7 games, I should say 70 or fewer. They got to approximately 70 against Ohio, but man, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, when you've got that ghastly of an offense, you better be good with that regard, and well, Buffalo, they are not. The Buffalo Bulls are 341st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Bowling Green, a top 150 team. Bowling Green should be able to go out there, dominate this game against a Buffalo team that just right now has all sorts of warts. Though that said, I did set my line at a 12.5. This is a Bowling Green team that they themselves shoot less than 32% from 3. They're only shooting about 68.5% at the free throw line. And this is a Buffalo team that, to their credit, they've been able to get a little bit more going with regards to a few pieces like Anquan Bolden as true freshman. So at the 13 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Buffalo. And with regards to the total, I set mine at a 148.5. So seeing the 149, going to be willing to go under, and I'm going to be willing to take 13 plus here with Buffalo. 615, 616 on the betting board. Miami of Ohio plays those to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is a underdog of 5.5 points. So on this game is 148. I set Northern Illinois as a underdog of 5.5 points. So at the current 5.5 number, it would be a little bit more of wait and see mode. We were seeing a 4.5 out there a little bit earlier. If we could get back to that 4.5, going to be willing to lay it with Miami of Ohio. The team has done a very good job of being able to lock down from 3-point range. They are a top 40 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they go up against a Northern Illinois team that, despite the fact that they're averaging north of 76.5 points per contest, this has been one of the least efficient offenses in all of college basketball. Northern Illinois, top 50 team with regards to total possessions per game, which really warps their offensive numbers. Northern Illinois is about 214th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Now, I will say, they're averaging about 1.7 points more per 100 possessions when they're in a road/shoot-to-court environment rather than when they are at home. And for Miami of Ohio, they're only averaging about 1.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot-to-court environment. And for Northern Illinois, what has been key for the team is their main scorer in David Coit. 19 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He's been able to get about 42-43% 3-point shooting as well. On a 6'8" Xavier Amos. Amos has really been able to ascend 19-plus points in 4 of the team's last 5 games for a Northern Illinois team that they just need a little bit more of that because he's Reek Nutter, and you've also got the gentleman from Switzerland and Yannick Conan Niederhauser have all been able to give you between about 5 to 5.5 rebounds per game, but this team just gets absolutely tossed down low, and they do go up against the Miami of Ohio team that one of their biggest kryptonites is down low, so not being able to unearth that is really going to be hurting this Northern Illinois team, as Northern Illinois about 306th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Miami of Ohio, they're just 328th, but you do have Darwishi Hunter on the side of Miami of Ohio doing a nice job being able to dole it out, 12.5 points, shooting 36.5% from 3 for Miami of Ohio team that overall they do shoot about 37% from 3, though they're weak down low. They're strong on the perimeter. Anderson Marbeau is a 300 pounder that has been able to come in, been able to give you 14 points, 2 assists, has a little bit of versatility with regards to being able to pop threes. And for Miami of Ohio, they're only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. It is a Miami of Ohio defense that, while it's been far from amazing, you know what? They have given up 72 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games in regulation. They did play an overtime game against Ball State. Meanwhile, this has been a Northern Illinois team that has a tendency to get held down a little bit more. 73 points or fewer scored in 3 of their last 4 games. So I do think that Miami of Ohio does a good job of being able to guard the perimeter with them not getting completely dominated down low. That should allow them to be able to take this one. So if we could get back to that 4.5 opener that I was seeing before, willing to lay with Miami of Ohio, as I did set them as a 5.5 point favorite. And with regards to the total, mean mine a 151. I do think that for Northern Illinois, a team that's well outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and a Northern Illinois team that, quite frankly, is just getting blitzed from 3-point range. They're in 20th with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and they're going to be giving it up in this one. So, looking at the over and 1 to lay with Miami of Ohio. 617, 618 is the DK Network right a pick, as you've got George Washington, our nation's first president. They are going to be playing us to Rhode Island. Rhode Island does find themselves as a 5.5 point underdog, and your total on this game going to be finding it any between a 154.5 and 155. I did set my total 152. I'm going to be taking a look at the under in this spot, but my right up here is going to be on George Washington. I'd be willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. We were seeing some 4.5s a little bit earlier, so hopefully we can get back to that mark. But still, even at the 5.5, you've got good value here with the George Washington team that they really have a fearsome foursome, as you've got James Bishop, who's your top scorer, supplying 4.5 assists, 17.5 points per contest, but then you've got Garrett Johnson, Maximus Edwards, along with Darren Buchanan. This trio has been really good at being able to help out Mr. Bishop, as these 3 guys, they're combining for about 41 points. All 3 of them give you at least 5.7 rebounds per game, and they go up against a Rhode Island team that is going to get absolutely tossed with regards to their turnovers. It's a Rhode Island team that has turned the ball over 12.8 times per contest. If you look at turnovers on a per possession basis, they are 282nd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, they are the second worst team in all of college basketball at being able to generate turnovers. They're generating fewer than 9 per contest. This is against the George Washington team that is about 220th in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And it's a big reason why this Rhode Island team has been all sorts of inconsistent. They had a run where they had 4 straight games where they got to 77 plus points. Since that run, 71 points or fewer in all but 1 out of their last 7 games. And this Rhode Island team, they are scoring more than 10 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. And on the road, they are giving up nearly 18 points more per 100 possessions than when they are at home as well. So you've got some big-time home and road splits there for George Washington. They give up 20 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment. Couple that with the fact that Rhode Island just does not have the ability to be able to hit free throws. They're in the bottom 10 in all of college basketball at 62.7%. You've been able to get some nice production out of David Green since he's come back. 15.5 points, 5 boards, shooting 56% from 3, but as we know, that's a 3-point shooting percentage that is very unsustainable. That said, you've had Jaden Ellis, Lewis Coatwright be able to combine for about 25 points. Coatwright, your main facilitator, with about 3.5 assists per contest. But even though George Washington is a little bit top heavy, they do have a lot of support down low this team in terms of block shots per game at home. They block north of 10% of opponent shots when they're at home. That's a top 20 block rate in all of college basketball. Big reason why Babatunde Ikangbola, who's been able to give you about 3 blocks, 6 boards, and about 4 points per contest. So he's been very fascinating with that regard, to say the least. But this is a Rhode Island team that they just have a tough time being able to D up on the road. They're allowing opponents to shoot 39.3% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot court environment. George Washington, they've been able to do a solid job of being able to lock it down from 3-point range at home as well, allowing opponents to shoot just 29.7% from 3-point range at home. It's a George Washington team that's currently riding a 4-game losing streak, having given up 80 plus in each of their last 4 games, but with the way that this Rhode Island team is performing on the road, each of their last 2 road games, they've given up 92 plus points. I do think that George Washington going to be able to bust through here, and I just don't think that Rhode Island does their part with this total because of the sloppy play that they've had on the road. So, did set my total 152. I'm going to be looking at the under, and my DK Network right to pick. That is on our nation's first president in George Washington, willing to lay up to 7.5 points with them. 619, 620 on the betting board. VCU hits the road. They're facing off against Fordham. Fordham is a underdog of 4 to 4.5 points. So on this game, 140.5. set VCU as a 4.5-point favorite. So at the 4, which is mostly what I'm seeing, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This is a VCU team that's dealing with an injury to Sean Bearsau. He's missed each of the last 2 games, but even without him, they played without him a lot this year already. They have already played 13 games without his services, and you've got a pair of guys at the top in Joe Bejmili along with Max Shulga, who have been able to combine to shoot about 39.5% from 3 while being able to supply the team with 28 points per contest. You've got Shulga along Zeb Jackson combining for a little bit over 7 assists per game as well. And this VCU team has really done a nice job in terms of their defense. Not a team that's going to generate as many turnovers as they have in past years, but for this VCU bunch, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 56th in all of college basketball. They actually give up about 0.6 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/court environment. And they go up against a Fordham team that they themselves are giving up 4 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're on the road rather than when they're at home. So they're actually a worse defensive team when they're at home like they are for this game, which I do find to be very intriguing. But you still have Abdul Sambilia, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards, shipping in there about 2.5 blocks per contest. He's a nice interior presence, but it's a Fordham team that they just get sloppy with it. 13 turnovers per game. They're well outside the top 225 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, despite having a pair of guys in Untitled Charlton, just Hoffmetter, who have been able to combine for about 6 assists per contest. You've been able to get a 40% three-point shooter in Kyle Rose to be able to give you in that neighborhood about 9.5 points per contest, but his offense is inconsistent for him, only shooting 65% of the free throw line. VCU has done a nice job digging up away from home, and for Fordham, they should be able to win the battle down low on the glass. They're a top 75 team with regards to rebound rate, but VCU has been a top 75 rebound rate team despite having only one player. That'd be Tabu Lowell, who's been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. He's chipping in there 5.7 boards per contest, but all in all, I do think that VCU going to be able to find a way, bust through, get the job done on the road in a game that I think is going to be middle of the road with regards to scoring. I did set my total at 141.5. I do think that you get some late game fouling at Fordham, being a top 55 team in all of college basketball with regards to possessions per game. I do think that you get a little bit more of an up and down game, so looking over and willing to lay up to 4 with VCU. 621, 622 on the betting board. Eastern Michigan is going to be playing against Toledo. Toledo is a favorite on the road of 10 points. So last game, 147 to 147.5 with Toledo. I did set them as a favorite of 10 points as well. So we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement here. We were seeing some openers that were varying just a touch. I was seeing, I believe, a 9.5 out there. And if we could get down to single digits, that'll be a take for me on Toledo. Anything north of 10 is going to be a take for me on Eastern Michigan. With this Eastern Michigan team, they are going to have a very nice go-to scorer out there in Ty Acuff, who's able to give you north of 22 points per contest. The problem is everyone else on the roster just doesn't give him too much, so he's had to become a volume shooter because with Acuff, even though he's giving you about 21 points per contest, he's shooting 25.5% per 3. For a team that as a whole, they're shooting about 29.5% from distance. That is a bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball. You do get a little bit of versatility out of Julius Ellerby. He's been able to supply the team with about 5 boards. He's able to give you about 2 assists per game as well, but he's been dealing with injuries recently as well. That has left them with really no answers the last few games and really not a lot of versatility in general. In the games that they have been without him, they've scored 56 points or fewer in 3 out of those 4. Meanwhile, you've got a Toledo team that's actually been doing quite a bit of a better job in terms of their defense. Doesn't sound like much, but for Toledo, they have now given up 73 points or fewer in 5 out of their last 6 games. And it is a bunch that they still have Raheem Moss along with Dante Maddox, who've been able to supply the team with a combined about 32 points per contest. They both are able to combine for about 3 steals per contest. While Tyler Cochran, he is a do-it-all sort of player, except for, well, he's popping for 3. He shoots 32% from distance, but 13 points, 2 steals, 6.5 boards, a little bit over 2 assists per game. It's a little bit of a top-heavy Toledo team that is never really going to be on top of the world when it comes to their rebound rate. With Toledo, you don't have anyone on the roster other than really Cochran, who gives you north of 6 boards per contest for Toledo. They rank about 183rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate, but I like this Eastern Michigan team is doing a good job batting down the hatches down low, 314th in the country with that regard. Been able to get a bit more production as well out of Javion Simmons, who's been able to give you about 4 boards a block, 12.5 points per contest with 14 plus in each of the team's last 4 games. Toledo a bit diminished with their 3-point shooting, but they do get to go up against an Eastern Michigan team that has been doing a great job of giving it up from 3-point range as they're allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from 3. I will say, they allow opponents to only shoot about 30% from 3 at home, 37% from 3 in a roadside shooting corner environment. Do think that irons out a little bit. And I do think that Toledo, even though they are a bottom team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, you're not going to get hurt because Eastern Michigan just doesn't have the weapons to be able to exploit that. So I did set my total 148. I do think that Eastern Michigan gets carved up, but Ty Acuff gives them some buckets. So looking at the over, I'm with Toledo, 9.5 or less. Want to lay with them anything north of 10. That'll be my buy point on Eastern Michigan. 623, 624 on the betting board. Canisius, it's a road face-off against Niagara. Niagara is a favorite of 3.5 to 4 points. Totals between 148.5 and 149. Set Niagara as a 4-point favorite, so you're at the 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Niagara. This has not been the same defense that we have become accustomed to, as for Niagara, they're well outside the top 225 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and turn 80th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. At home, opponents are shooting 41% from 3-point range against them. That is the third worst mark in all of college basketball, but we have a Canisius team that, even though they do a solid job being able to guard from the outside at home, opponents only shoot about 28% from 3-point range against them. On the road / in a neutral court environment, that balloons up to 36.5% from 3, and Canisius has fallen outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis themselves. It is a Canisius team that has dealt with a few injuries, but really, other than the man that has been out for really the entirety of the season, and Taj Savosky, everyone is back in the full. Tiam Ijandal along Trey Dinkins are combined for about 28.5 points per contest, along 3 steals between the two of them. It is a Canisius team that they do shoot 35% from 3, but need to have trepidation in a tight spot with them, as they only shoot 64.5% the free throw line. Bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Niagara, they just have everyone on this team lighting it up from 3-point range. Among your top 5 scorers that have made at least 1 3 this year, 4 of them shoot at least 40.5% from 3-point range. And among players that have made at least 1 3 and have accounted for at least 20 points thus far this season, you've got every one of them shooting at least 34.8% from 3-point range, with Ahmad Henderson leading the way with about 13.5 points per contest. This team does leave a little bit of something to be desired down low, but Harlan Obiana is a 7-footer. It's able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Should match up well with Frank Mitchell. It's been really good down low for Canisius. 13.5 points, about 11.5 rebounds per game. He's a top 5 player in all of college basketball with regards to his rebound rate, and this is a Niagara team that is about 248th in the country with regards to their rebound rate compared to Canisius being about 120th, but even with that, Luke Bumblelow, he's able to do a nice job, give you about 10.5 points, shooting 40.5% from 3-point range. Ayubeng Mensah shooting north of 42% from distance. He's been able to supply the team with 10 plus points per contest, and it's a Niagara defense that, it certainly does have its warts, but it's been playing a little bit better recently. If you're looking at regulation and regulation only, it is a squad that has now given up 73 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, going up against Canisius team that they have been getting absolutely cooked. They've given up at least 70 points in each of their last 5 games, while the offense has really been sputtering. They've scored 71 points or fewer in all but 2 out of their last 10 games. I do think that for Niagara, a team that has been rough with their defense but still plays relatively slow, that they're able to get a foothold on this game. It is a Canisius team that's going to be looking to play a little bit more up-tempo, but with Canisius currently in an offensive rut, I do think that Niagara finds a way to be able to pull out a relative nip-and-tuck game. I set my line at 4, so you're at the 3.5 full to lay with Niagara. I did set my total 146, so also looking at this total under. 625, 626 on the betting board. Kent State plays us Western Michigan. Western Michigan is an underdog of 10.5 points. Total on this game is 148. I did set Western Michigan as a underdog of 9.5 points. So here at 10 plus, going to be willing to take those points. It is a Western Michigan team has been able to see a nice rise in terms of their offense ever since they've been able to get their full allotment of guys. As Javonte Brown was out of the fold due to being a 2-time transfer, he has come back in the fold. He's been able to give you about 10 points, 5 boards, a block per contest as a true 7-footer. Now the question becomes, what are you going to be able to get out of some of these ancillary guards? Jefferson, De La Cruz, Marengo has been able to shoot about 33% from 3. He's able to give you about 10 points per contest, but has really done a nice job building out the ball recently. 4+ assists in 4 of the team's last 5 games. 2 turnovers or fewer in all but 1 of those games to be able to help out a guy in B. Artist White who's been in and out of the fold all season, only give you about 9 points per contest. But for Western Michigan, despite the fact that the offense has been better recently, overall for the season, it has been still a little bit wobbly in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This bunch is still 249th in all of college basketball, but actually averaging more points per possession when they're on the road rather than when they are at home. And this Kent State team has fallen well outside the top 125 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're still doing an okay job of generating turnovers, but it's far from amazing. And for Kent State, they're actually allowing 7.9 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment. You've been able to get good production out of Jalen Sullinger, has been able to supply 15 points, shooting 40% from three. And all in all, it is a Kent State team that they do shoot 36.4% from three-point range. They go up against a Western Michigan team that has been all over the place with regards to their defense, but for this Western Michigan team, they do a solid job on the interior. They allow you to shoot in that neighborhood about 36% from three-point range in a roadside shoot corner environment, so that should lead to some points there. You've got Chris Payne, who's been able to give you 13 points, 7.5 boards, block per contest down low for this Kent State team as well. But the question is, can Giovanni Santiago be able to give the team a little bit more pop as well? He's had to become a primary ball handler after they've lost Sincere Carey during the offseason, and he's cut down on the turnovers, but with him cutting down on the turnovers, it's also led to him giving the team only about 8.5 points per contest, shooting about 30% from three. After a season ago, he was shooting darn near 40% from distance. So I do think that this spot bodes very well for Western Michigan, especially with Seth Hubbard now being able to give you 15 plus points per contest. Western Michigan has been all over the place with regards to their defense. The offense has been sputtering a little bit as well, scoring fewer than 70 points in each of their last 3 games. That said, this is a Kent State team that they themselves have allowed north of 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, and they themselves have been having some issues with regards to their offense. As for Kent State, this team has scored 71 points or fewer in now 3 out of their last 5 games, and it is a circumstance where I do think that Western Michigan is going to be able to hold in there. I'm going to be willing to take double figures with Western Michigan, set them as a 9.5 point underdog, and in terms of total, maybe my total a 143.5. I do think that Kent State, a team that has been really one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball begin the season, but in conference play has been playing at a pace of more than 3 possessions fewer. It's going to continue to look to slow it down. So going to be diving in on this total under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Western Michigan. 627, 628 on the betting board. Oklahoma State, it's the road to facing off against Houston, and Houston does find themselves as 20.5 to 21 point favorites. The last game is anywhere between 128.5 and 129. Is Oklahoma State completely outgunned in this spot? Oh, absolutely. I cannot justify laying 21 points in this spot. I set my number at 19. I'm going to be willing to take a look at the points. With Oklahoma State, they do have one very nice thing going for them, and that would be Javon Small. He has not been living up to his name, as he has been able to come up quite big. With Javon Small, he's able to supply you with 14.5 points, about 5 boards, 5 assists per contest. It is an Oklahoma State team, by the way, that they have been one of the worst at being able to take care of the ball in all of college basketball, 13.2 turnovers per game, while shooting just 67.5% at the free throw line. But for this Oklahoma State team, while the defense is by no stretch of the imagination is like supreme or amazing or anything like that, I mean, it could be worse. This Oklahoma State team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're about 120th. They're allowing a little bit over 5 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot scoring environment rather than at home. And for Houston, this is your number 1 scoring defense in all of college basketball, actually allowing 28 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Much of that is due to the fact that they played a Charmin soft non-conference schedule as well. All those games were at home, which is why you've got such a dramatic split. Now, when it comes to this Houston team, they do a tremendous job as well of being able to take care of the ball. Fewer than 10 turnovers per contest. You've got so many guys that do a good job in concert with one another in the backcourt, as you've got your top scorer in LJ Cryer being able to give you about 15.5 points per contest. He's been a high 33-point shooter all season long at about 38.5%. Meanwhile, Jamal Shed does such a good job of being able to take care of the ball. About 6 assists to 2 turnovers per game for a team that, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, is in the top 30 in all of college basketball. This is a Houston team that once again finds themselves in the top 20 with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that Juwan Roberts is really your lone guy that gives you north of 6.5 rebounds per game. You've been able to have someone like Joseph Tugler be able to step up, be able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. When he's been out there, Terrence Arnaud has been able to do a solid job of being able to hit things down low, though he's been out for a little bit over a month. Even with that, Tugler has been able to step up in his place. You still have Javier Francis, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game as well. So all these guys, they do a really good job of being able to hit the glass. So I do think that for Oklahoma State, despite the fact that they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, while they lose a battle down low, they've got a top 75 rebound rate in a roadside short corner environment, and they do have Keon Williams, who's been able to give you about 5.5 boards. He's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from three-point range. He emerged for a double-double in their last game against Kansas State. I think that Oklahoma State is going to be overwhelmed. I think that Houston is going to be swarming with regards to their defense. I think we've went a little bit too far, though. So I did set this number in at a 19. So now that we've gotten to 21, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Oklahoma State. And in terms of this total, I made mine a 127. Houston has been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. They truly do lock it down on defense. So, going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Oklahoma State. 629, 630 on the betting board. Boston College plays us Florida State. Florida State is a underdog of 3 points. Your total on this game, 151.5. Did set Florida State as a underdog of 4.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay with Boston College. Boston College going to have the best player out there on the floor. He is in the post, and his name is Quentin Post, a true 7-footer that is shooting darn near 40% from three-point range, has done absolutely superb work of being able to impact pretty much all facets of the game. 7.5 boards, 16 points, 42% three-point shooter. Now, the big key for Boston College in this game is locking it down from three-point range. That has been their main Achilles heel all season long, whether that be at home or on the road. Boston College giving a lot of open looks from three-point range. They are 284th in all of college basketball with this regard, going up against the Florida State team that they themselves have their warts with regards to being able to guard the perimeter, but most of those, ironically enough, come at home. Florida State is allowing opponents to shoot 35% from three-point range at home. That's down to about 29.5% away from home, but this is also a Florida State team that isn't as dominant down low this year as they have been in the past. You've been able to get some relatively good production with about 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game out of Jameer Watkins, who's able to give you about 14 points per contest. Bobby Miller has been able to chip in there a block, about 5 rebounds per game, but this is a Boston College team that should be able to hold their own down low. For Florida State, in terms of their rebound rate, they're currently clocking in that neighborhood of about 242nd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this Boston College team, they don't get a ton of second chances, but they're about 182nd in the country with regards to their rebound rate. And this is a Florida State team that they really can get cash on the interior. Meanwhile, this is an offense that they're pretty much a hit or miss sort of offense. 181st in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Primo Spears has not been able to find himself from the outside, registering about 12 points per contest, but only shoots about 30% from three. All in all, Florida State shooting 32.5% from the outside. They very much rely upon Darren Green for those outside shots. He's been able to shoot about 40% from three-point range. Now, one very good thing that Florida State has been able to do is have active hands. They've been able to generate a bunch of turnovers. The team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis is currently a top 40 team in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they're in the top 30 in all of college basketball, but they go up against a Boston College team that is a top 40 team themselves in terms of taking care of the ball. Had a little bit of a rough go of it in their 2 games against Syracuse, but other than Syracuse, nobody has really been able to generate turnovers on this team. You've had Claudel Harris be able to give you double figures. Really love what he's been able to bring to the table. You've also been able to have Devin McLaughlin be able to chip in there about 11.6 rebounds per game, with Jaden Zachary giving you 4.3 assists to about 1.7 turnovers per game. Allows this Boston College team to be very efficient and, in my opinion, be able to get the job done in this ordeal. I did set Boston College as a favorite of 4.5 points, so you're at 3 to 3.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. And with this total, I did set my total at a 150.5. Here at the 151.5, looking at the under, this Florida State team has had a tough time putting the ball in the basket, and they themselves much better with regards to guarding the perimeter when they are on the road. So looking at the under and going to be one to lay with Boston College. 631, 632 on the betting board. Wake Forest is on the road facing off against Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech is a underdog at home of 4 points. So this game is between 150.5 and 151. Made Wake Forest a 4.5 point favorite. Forest the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. The big key for Wake Forest is having their defense travel. This has been a bunch that has been lacking a little bit with that regard, though. They are doing now a much better job down low. Their rebound rate numbers with them being outside the top 150, that is a little bit misleading because now they've got Efton Reed back at the fold. He's done a solid job being able to supply about 8.5 rebounds per game. Austin Carr has been able to do a relatively solid job as well, being able to chip in there about 7.5 boards per contest. So even though you've got Wake Forest outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate on the road, at home it's significantly better. I do think that Wake Forest going to be able to do a nice job manning up on the glass. And for Wake Forest, they're starting to take away the arc a little bit more. They're up to about 130th with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, going up against a Georgia Tech team that they've been able to get a lot out of Nathan George. George has been able to give out 4+ assists in 8 out of the team's last 9 games. He's been very consistent with regards to his scoring as well. Doesn't shoot it great from 3, but for Georgia Tech, even though it doesn't sound like much, but now they're up to about 32.5% three-point shooting. That's been big because they've been inconsistent from the perimeter all season long. And Georgia Tech is about 101st in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, while doing a solid job down low. They're a top 45 team in all of college basketball with regards to percentage of missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, with Bate and Ndongo being able to give you about 13 points, 8 boards per contest. But Georgia Tech overall, they are 255th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So you've got a Wake Forest team that they themselves who have their warts with regards to their defense, but they're still clocking in about 70th with this regard, though. For Wake Forest, they are giving up about 18.7 points more per 100 possessions when they do leave home. And for this team, they now have Damari Monsanto back in the fold once again. He's sort of been in and out, but returned in that game against Syracuse. When he's been on the floor, he's been able to shoot 47.5% from three. He should be very limited, but even if he is, you still have another guy in Parker Fredrickson who's able to come in off the bench. He's shooting 42.5% from three. And then Cam Mildreth, Austin Carr, Hunter Salas, they all combined to shoot about 40% from three-point range. These three guys have done a great job of being able to supply the team with so much production. Salas, 18 points per contest. Hildreth and Carr, 14 apiece. They all give you 4+ rebounds per game. It's a top-heavy Wake Forest team, but it's a talented Wake Forest team that does a relatively solid job of being able to stay out of foul trouble, be able to keep these guys out there on the floor, and they face off against a Georgia Tech team that they have been able to ascend quite a bit with regards to their offense, being able to put up their 74+ in each of their last two games, but they've been inconsistent all season long. A concept for Wake Forest has just been being able to get to 70, as they've been able to get to at least 75 points in pretty much all but 2 out of their last 11 games. And when you take a look at overall offensive production and points scored on a per possession basis, this Wake Forest team, home and road, has been one of the best in all of college basketball, clocking in 32nd in all of college basketball. I do think that with having Efton Reed doing a better job on the glass and with the way that Wake Forest, as so many guys are able to bomb it from three-point range, I do think that that puts this Georgia Tech team in a relatively rough spot. I did set my total at a 150.5. Georgia Tech is pretty good with regards to their perimeter defense at home. Meanwhile, even though they've been able to emerge the last two games with regards to their scoring, this is still a Georgia Tech team that they have scored fewer than 70 points in regulation, because the Clemson game went to double overtime, so fewer than 71 points in 4 out of their last 6 games. So going to be taking a look at this total under and willing to lay up to 4 with Wake. 633, 634 on the betting board. North Carolina plays host to Clemson. Clemson is a 7.5 to an 8-point underdog. Total on this game, 153.5. With Clemson, I did set them as an underdog of 8.5 points. Going to be willing to lay up to 8 with North Carolina. Do have to have a little bit of a fear of a letdown spot with them being ranked down number 3 after taking down Duke. And in their last game out, they had lost that game on the road to Georgia Tech, but I do think that they're pretty bulletproof and are going to be able to take it to a Clemson team that, quite frankly, this is a team that's quite impressive with their offense. They're quite unimpressive in terms of their defense. Clemson is 188th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they have been sliding a little bit with their three-point shooting numbers. Clemson, despite that, they are 24th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. But how about this North Carolina team? All of a sudden being able to play some good defense, and for Clemson, their lifeblood is being able to get open looks and being able to shoot it from three-point range. North Carolina, they're 21st in the country with opponents shooting 29.7% from three-point range against them. For North Carolina, they got a big performance last time out from Armando Bacot, and he really hasn't been the best low post player for the team over the last month or so. That's actually been Harrison Ingram. 12.5 points, 9 boards, shooting 41.5% from three-point range. Prior to that Duke game for Bacot, he had not reached a 10-rebound plateau, and really each of his last 4 games has had 10 points or fewer in all of them. And yet North Carolina has still been able to win and win convincingly because RJ Davis has been Mr. Do It All with 21.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists on 41.5% three-point shooting. They go up against a Clemson team that certainly can get exposed from beyond the arc. This Clemson team, about 198th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They've got a nice sharpshooter of their own, Joe Girard, who's been able to shoot about 40% from 3. He's been able to supply the team with 13+ points per contest. Meanwhile, you got PJ Hall chipping in there, 20 points, 7 boards. He has been rock solid with that regard, giving you a block and a half per contest, while Ian Shefflin has been able to give you 9.5 rebounds per game. But even with Bacot not necessarily being the same rebounder that he has been in past years, this North Carolina team has still been very good on the glass, 19th in the country with regards to rebound rate. This Clemson team doesn't do a bad job in their own right, but this Clemson team just doesn't quite compare at 57th with regards to their rebound rate. Chance Hunter has been able to give you about 12 points. He's only shooting about 27.5% from three-point range, though. Clemson does a nice job of being able to take care of the ball, but I do think that North Carolina is going to be able to expose that leaky defense. This North Carolina team has been quite consistent with regards to their offense recently. They have gotten to at least 73 points in each of their last 7 games. Last time these two teams played, Clemson lost that game at home 65-55. I don't think Clemson goes 1 of 18 from three-point range. That would just be absolutely ridiculous. Clemson actually won that turnover battle 10-5. That said, North Carolina, I do think that they have figured out a way to be able to guard this Clemson team, despite the fact that this could be a letdown spot. I don't think that it happens here. I do think that North Carolina slows down this Clemson team for a second time. I did set my number at an 8.5, willing to lay up to 8 with North Carolina. Set my total at a 150.5 as well. It's also diving under. 635, 636 on the betting board. Little Rock plays FC UT Martin. UT Martin is an underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Total on this game, 162.5 to 163. I say UT Martin as a underdog of 3 points. So here at the 2.5, it's a max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay. You've got a pair of teams that are in the top 50 in all of college basketball. They regards to total possessions per game, and this is a UT Martin team that they do a nice job down low. We've got a pair of guys, Jacob Cruz along with Issa Muhammad, combined for 17 rebounds at 29 points per game. Cruz has been able to shoot 42% from 3, and UT Martin as a whole, they are shooting about 36% from 3-point range, and 12.3 turnovers per game. When you consider how quickly this team plays, that's not too bad. And UT Martin is a little bit of a better defensive team, 208th in all of college basketball. The yards points allowed on a per possession basis. Little Rock, they're more around 220th, but this is a Little Rock team that I think is going to be able to do a solid job from the perimeter. This Little Rock team does have Jameer Chaplin, who's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range, being able to supply about 15 plus points per contest, along with Kalen, aka KK Robinson. Now for this Little Rock team, they are allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from 3. That's about 154th in all of college basketball. They've been able to do a solid job with that regard. They might be up against it just a little bit down low, but that said, this is a Little Rock team that they are much more comfortable with their offense when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot corner environment, as you've been able to notice a lot of these ancillary pieces being able to step up when they have been away from home. Bradley Douglas has been able to shoot at home about 43% from 3. That falls below 35% in a roadside shoot corner environment. He's supplying the team with about 10.5 points per contest. If you look at the overall just offensive efficiency and points scored per possession, Little Rock is up to about 123rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for this UT Martin team, while they do put up good raw scoring numbers in general, a lot of that is due to their tempo. They're more on 158th with regards to their overall offensive efficiency. And Little Rock has done a nice job cutting down their turnovers to about 12.5 per contest. They do a nice job of being able to knife it down low. And for this Little Rock team, even though they don't necessarily have those guys that are able to give you 9 plus rebounds per game, out of their top 5 scorers, 4 of them have been able to give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game. Little Rock is 137th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. You've got a UT Martin team that they're clocking in more around about 120th, but I do think that the home court advantage is going to be able to win out in this spot, along with the 12 points, 5 boards out of D'Antoni Gordon, who's been able to give you some nice versatility recently as well. So a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with Little Rock in a game that I think is going to be very up and down with both teams approaching 80. Did set my total 165, so looking over and looking to lay the number with Little Rock. 637, 638 on the betting board. St. Joe's, they hope to not be average Joe's. They play as Dayton. Dayton is a favorite of 2 points on the road. Your total on this game is between 144.5 and 145, and with Dayton, I did set them as the 2-point underdog, so I've got this completely flipped around as I'm going to be taking a look at St. Joe's outright on the money line. It is a Dayton team that has been very good from 3-point range there as a whole, shooting about 40% from distance, top 15 mark in all of college basketball. And for Dayton, what has really been a forte of theirs is taking care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, despite the fact that their main point guard, Malachi Smith, went out night number 1 of the season. This team has been able to maintain, but they go up against the St. Joe's team that's in the top 45 nationally with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And the reason why they've been so good on defense is that they've guarded the perimeter very well. 106th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, allowing opponents to shoot just 29.8% from 3-point range against them at home. You've got a clear number 1 scorer in Eric Reynolds, who's been able to give you 18 points, shoots about 43.5% from 3 for a St. Joe's team that, while they're not quite at Dayton's level in terms of 3-point shooting prowess, this team has been able to do a nice job being able to stroke it at about 37.5% from the outside. And on top of that, you've got a lot of guys around Reynolds who have been able to do a nice job of being able to chip in their production, as you've got Xavier Brown, Lynn Greer, Rasheer Fleming, along with Cam Brown. All 4 of these guys give you between 10.5 and 11.6 points per contest, so very good balance scoring there. When it comes to Greer, he's your main facilitator, along with Brown. They've both been able to combine for about 7.1 assists per contest. Brown has been able to shoot about 43.5% from 3-point range. When it comes to the St. Joe's team, overall shooting about 37.4% from 3-point range, but that is a number that elevates a little bit more on the road rather than at home, but at the same time, they've been able to find quite a bit more recently. Last 3 games, they've been able to shoot about 42% from 3. Rasheer Fleming has been able to give you 7.5 boards, block and half per contest to give the team some rough and tumble against the Dayton Dayton team that they have allowed 71 points or fewer in essentially 15 out of their last 16 games ever since that invitational in the state of South Carolina. Nate Santos, along Dayron Holmes, who've done a nice job down low, combined for about 14.5 rebounds. Holmes, more of your true rim protector, 2.3 blocks, 20 points per contest, and both of these guys shoot north of 40% from three-point range. It has been impressive what we've seen from their versatility and their just overall play. And Dayton, they themselves are a very good team at being able to guard the perimeter. They're a top 40 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and it's pretty much consistent home to road. They allow opponents to shoot 31.3% from three-point range at home, 30.5% in a roadside shoot court environment. But with Fleming being able to step up down low for St. Joe's, with the St. Joe's team being a team that has really been able to do a nice job with regards to their offense recently, getting past the 72-point plateau in each of their last 4 games. I do think that St. Joe's is going to be able to find a way to be able to pull it out against a Dayton team that they've been good with regards to their defense recently, but this has been a team that sometimes can be a little bit inconsistent. I do think that if Dayton is thrown off their game a little bit with their three-point shooting, and this is a very good three-point shooting defense in St. Joe's, it can cause for some issues. So I said St. Joe's as a 2-point favorite, looking at them outright on the money line. Both of these teams are really keeping teams below 72 as well. I set my total at 142. I think both teams approach 70, but really don't get too far past that. Set my total at 142, looking under, and looking at St. Joe's outright on the money line. 639, 640 on the betting board. Oklahoma plays us to BYU, and BYU just find themselves as a 1-point road favorite. Total on this game, 150.5 to 151.5. Set Oklahoma as the 1.5-point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. This BYU team has been able to do a lot very well. They're in the top 30 nationally in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 30 team with regards to rebound rate. But Oklahoma, despite the fact that they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game, as a matter of fact, they've only got one guy that gives you north of 5.3 rebounds per game. That would be 6'7" Jalen Moore, who's been able to give you 10.6 boards per contest. They're a top 50 rebound rate team as well, with having a pair of guys in Ortega away, coupled with Javion McCollum, combined for about 27.5 points per contest. Away is continuing to shoot about 47.5% from three. Do expect a little bit of a fall off there, but what else falls off is the overall play of BYU when they do hit the road. Now, BYU has done one thing very well. They've guarded the perimeter. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 28.2% from three-point range at home, 32% in a roadside shoot court environment, 20th overall with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but Oklahoma is 5th with this regard, allowing opponents to shoot just 29.4% from three-point range when they are at home. And for this BYU team, you take a look at the amount of points more that they're giving up per possession away from home. They are giving up about 10.5 points more per 100 possessions. Meanwhile, this is an Oklahoma team that they really do feast on teams in Norman. Oklahoma, 19th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 12.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. And for this BYU team, they've done a good job with their overall versatility. A big reason why they have been such a good rebound rate team themselves is that they don't necessarily have that one guy that's going to give you a whole bunch of rebounds. As a matter of fact, Noah Waterman with about 5.9 to 6 rebounds per game, he leads the way. But just take a look up and down this roster of your top 5 scorers. 4 of them do give you at least 4 rebounds per contest. You've had Trayvon Nell be able to do a nice job with 12 points, 4 boards, shooting 44% from three-point range. They've been able to get back to the fold as well. Fusani Traore, who's been missing for quite a bit of the season, has finally rounded back in the form. He was finally able to play north of 20 minutes in the last game against West Virginia. Was very big in that game. 24 points, 9 rebounds. That does elevate all the further this BYU team. A pair of guys in the backcourt as well that are able to give you north of 3.5 assists per game is very nice as well. So you've got Spencer Johnson doling out 3.5 assists. Doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3, but is a very good facilitator. Meanwhile, Dalen Hall, he gives you 5 assists, 9 points. He shoots 37.5% from 3 for a BYU team. Only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest for Oklahoma. Their bread and butter on defense is not necessarily generating turnovers. It's just getting up in your grill, playing good man-to-man defense. This has been an Oklahoma team that's fallen on some tough times recently. 74-plus points surrendered in 3 of their last 4 games, but I do think that they rise up in this spot against a BYU team that has given up 72-plus points in each of their last 5 games, but I do think that both of these teams see a little bit of regression, especially BYU from three-point range, and I do think that going on the road is going to take it out of this BYU team. I said Oklahoma as a 1.5-point favorite. I'm looking at Oklahoma outright on the money line, and did set my total 147.5. Though these teams have been very efficient with their offense, neither is really up-tempo, and I do think that both of these defenses do step up. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be taking a look at Oklahoma on the money line. 641, 642 on the betting board. Texas plays those to Iowa State. Iowa State is a underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Totals between 140 and 141.5. Semi-total at 140.5, mostly seeing 141 out there. And plus, at a 141, 141.5, I'd rather have that under rather than the 140 over, just because even though this is an Iowa State team that they allow north of 20 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside-shoot-scoring environment rather than at home, this is still a top 5 team in all of college basketball. The greatest points allowed on a per-possession basis, and an Iowa State team that they just rip the ball away from you. Top 5 team in the country. Guards turnovers forced on a per-possession basis. Taymon Lipsby, he just does it all. 3 steals, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, 13.5 points per game on 37% three-point shooting. Milan Mimo Silovic, would like to see him do more than the 3.2 rebounds per game down low, but that said, he's shooting 40% from three-point range. They face off against the Texas team that it does feel like they're starting to find their swagger a little bit more as well. Dylan Mitchell came up very big for the team over the weekend against TCU. He has had a double-double in each of the team's last 2 games. He has supplied 10-plus rebounds in 3 of the team's last 4 games, and that's big for a Texas team that has been rather pedestrian on the glass. And if you're going to be able to attack this Iowa State team, you need to do it in 2 ways. From three-point range, as Iowa State is outside the top 125 with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and on the glass, as Texas, they are back to being in the top 100 with regards to their rebound rate. They're about 96th in all of college basketball. Iowa State, more around 69th, but that does taper off a little bit when they're on the road, and Dylan Dessou has been able to do a nice job of being able to lend versatility as well since he's come back for last 13 or so games. 15.5 points, a block, a steal, 4.5 rebounds, and shooting north of 50% from 3, a number that I do expect to fall off quite a bit, but this is a Texas team that they've been able to shoot about 37.5% from three-point range, and for this Iowa State team, while they do such a good job of being able to try to generate those turnovers, they are a team that they're a little bit vulnerable from distance, allowing opponents to shoot 39.5% from three-point range, with Max Abmas giving up 4 assists, shooting 40% from 3, supplying 18 points per game. I think that that's going to be a tough matchup, even with Keyshawn Gilbert being able to supply 14 points, 4 assists, and doing all that he does for this Iowa State offense. So with Texas, I do think that this is a bad matchup for an Iowa State team that they just continue to be consistent with regards to their defense. They've given up 72 points or fewer in really all but 4 of their games thus far this season. Meanwhile, for Texas, if you look at them in regulation, they have been able to do a much better job defensively themselves. They have now given up 73 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games ever since that loss to Central Florida. So I do think that this game is going to be bogged down a little bit more, which is why I want that 140/141.5 under. And with Texas, want to lay up to 2 with them, set them as a 2.5 point favorite. 643, 644 on the betting board. New Mexico, it's a road. They're facing off against Wyoming. Wyoming finds themselves as 10 to 10.5 point home underdogs. Total is between 155 and 155.5 with New Mexico. Made them a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wyoming. I do have to give a lot of credence to the fact that you're up at elevation in Wyoming, and this Wyoming team can really hurt you from three-point range. This has been a New Mexico team that, while we always talk about the offense with this team, they're a top 35 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per-possession basis, and this New Mexico team does not play around with guarding the arc, but it's very different when they're at home rather than when they're on the road. For New Mexico, they allow opponents to shoot 25.6% from three-point range at home. That balloons all the way up to 37.9% when they're away from home, and for this Wyoming team, they're a top 40 team in all of college basketball with regards to three-point shooting percentage. Sam Griffin has been flat-out tremendous with his offensive approach. 17.5 points, 3.5 assists, shooting 40.5% from three-point range. A cool cot shoots just below 40% from the outside, 15 points per contest. Now with Wyoming, what's been very strange about them is that their defense has been a whole heck of a lot better when they've been on the road rather than when they've been at home. They're actually giving up only about 0.6 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot-scoring environment rather than when they're at home. And for this Wyoming team, overall, with regards to their offensive efficiency, they're about 210th in all of college basketball. They do see a rise with regards to their offensive production, about 16 points per 100 possessions when they're at home. So things do get harebrained when they are in their friendly confines. You've been able to have Mason Walters, when he's been out there for this Wyoming team, be rock solid as well with about 12.5 points, 5.5 boards. Missed quite a bit of time, but he's been a nice X factor for the team. Now for Wyoming, they just do not stand a chance of being able to win this battle down low against New Mexico. New Mexico has a pair of guys in JT Toppin, along with Junior Joseph, who have been able to combine for about 16 rebounds per game. This is a New Mexico team that is 76th in the country with regards to rebound rate. Wyoming, they're more around 136th. But for New Mexico, this also has not been the world's greatest three-point shooting team. You've got Donovan Dent, Jalen House being able to both give you 15.5 points per contest. Dent Dent gives out 6 assists to about 2 turnovers per contest. House chips in there 3 boards, 4 assists, nearly 3 steals per contest. Both shoot between 35.5% and 37% from 3. But Jamal Mashburn Jr., he only shoots about 30% from 3, 15.5 points per contest for a team that they shoot about 34.5% from the outside. Now what New Mexico does not do is turn the ball over. 10 turnovers per contest. Wyoming, they're up more around about 14 turnovers per contest. That is going to be quite a bit of an issue, and I do think that's why Wyoming can't pull this one off outright, but I do think that the 10, a little bit too lofty here. Wyoming is a much different offense when they are at home, and this is a New Mexico team that I do think is going to do a good job of allowing just one-and-done opportunities in general. I do think that being up at elevation, it does take it off of this up-tempo team just a little bit as well. So I did set my total at 153.5 here at the 155, 155.5, looking under, and I'm going to be looking at the points with Wyoming. 645, 646 on the betting board. UConn plays us with Butler. Butler is a underdog of 14 to 14.5 points. Total on this game between 147.5 and 148 with Butler. I did set them as a underdog of 12 points. I'm going to be willing to take these points. UConn has been incredibly impressive with their offense. They're a top 5 team in all of college basketball. The regards points scored on a per possession basis. This is a UConn team, though, that they can be had a little bit from the outside. Now, they themselves have Cam Spencer shooting about 45% from 3. He and Tristan Noon have been all sorts of versatile. Both of these guys give you 15 plus points per contest. Noon is able to give you about 6 boards, 5 assists per contest. Spencer is going to chip in there about 3.5 assists, nearly 5 rebounds per game himself. But when it comes to this Butler team, they've done a pretty solid job of being able to knock down their threes, and they go up against a UConn team that now with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, it's been improving, but they're still allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3. That's about 108th in all of college basketball. Butler, they themselves are 60th in the country with this regard, and Butler is allowing opponents to shoot just 29.9% from 3-point range in a roadside shoot corner environment. They've got Pierre Brooks being able to chip in there, 16 points, 5 boards per contest. Love what I'm seeing out of him now. You've got Donovan Clingan, giant of the earth, back at the fold for UConn. That means that UConn is going to be able to win this battle down low, as Andre 3000 Screen has been able to give this Butler team some good production with about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game, along Jalen Thomas, who's been able to give you about 6 boards per contest. But this UConn team, they certainly do have that edge down low, 6th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. But this Butler team has some spunk, and they've got some good versatility. They're more around 179th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. But DJ Turner-Up Davis has been able to give you about 14 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 37% from 3, while Jalen Telford also shoots 37% from the outside end. For Butler, they've done a nice job protecting the ball, only about 10 turnovers per contest, with Pasha Alexander cleaning things up, generating some turnovers. It's a Butler team on a 4-game win streak, being able to get past the 88-point plateau in each of their last 3 games, 71 plus in each of their last 5. Meanwhile, this UConn team is now just absolutely stomping teams with regards to their defense. This UConn team has now allowed 67 points or fewer in each of their last 6 games. I do think that for UConn, they are going to be able to put their foot down with regards to their defense, but I do think that Butler hit some shots. I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there. So I did set my total 146 here at the 148, looking at the under, but I set Butler as a 12-point dog, so looking at the 2 touchdowns with them. 647, 648 on the betting board. Vanderbilt plays out to Kentucky, and Kentucky is an 9-point favorite. Your total between 151.5 and 152.5. I did set Kentucky as a favorite of 10 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Vanderbilt team, just quite frankly, it's not doing a whole heck of a lot right. They're outside the top 225 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Credit to them. They were able to take down Missouri over the weekend, but you do want to be attacking this Kentucky team down low, and with Colin Smith missing for pretty much the entirety of the season, he's only played 7 games thus far. That leaves you with Tyron Lawrence and Van Allen Lubin, who are combined for about 11.2 rebounds per game to try to win that battle. Vanderbilt being outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate. That's an issue, along with shooting 28% from 3. One thing Vanderbilt has done is take care of the ball, about 10.8 turnovers per contest, as Romagnon is a very good point guard, 14.5 points, 3.5 assists per game. But it's the Vanderbilt bunch that their top 6 scorers, you don't have a single guy that is shooting above 31.3% from 3-point range. It does, unfortunately, include Smith, but I do think that for Kentucky, their overall ball security is going to be able to help them out in this spot as well, because this is a Kentucky team that is still shooting 40.3% from 3-point range, and they're doing for some cold nights, but with them being a top 10 team in the country with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, it makes them bulletproof to that. On top of that, they also are now facing a Vanderbilt team that's 330th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So Reed Shepherd, while I don't think he continues to shoot 54.4% from 3-point range all season long, you should have a field day to be able to give the team 12 points, 4 assists per contest. I think it's becoming clear that Big Z, that contribution, it was more of a one-game wonder out of him. He hasn't given you too much recently, and they have been dealing with an injury to DJ Wagner, but DJ Wagner has been legitimately your 4th or 5th best player for this team. He's able to give you quite a bit of facilitation, but it's not too much of a score, and you're still in good hands with someone like a Robert Dillingham. He's able to give you 4 assists, 15 points per contest, really doesn't turn the ball over a whole heck of a lot. And for Vanderbilt, with them not having any size down low against a Kentucky team that they've been lacking with their defense, 79 plus points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games. I just don't think the Vanderbilt stands too much of a shot. The last time that Vanderbilt was able to get to the 70-point plateau, you have to go all the way back to when they played against Alabama on January 6th. That was 8 games ago. So I do think that Vanderbilt going to get handled here. I did set my total at 152. I do think that Kentucky does a lot of work on this total, so at the 151.5, look it over, and I'm willing to lay up to 9.5 with Kentucky, 649, 650 on the betting board. Colorado State plays out some Boise State, and Boise State is an underdog of 5.5 points. Total on this game between 140 and 140.5 with Boise State. I did set them as a underdog of 5.5 points as well, so we're going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement. This was one that we were seeing a little bit earlier on be more of a line of 5 to 4.5 even, so if we could get back down to 5 or less, I'd be willing to lay with Colorado State. This Colorado State team does have a really nice home court edge, but this is a Boise State team that just flat out they're playing the better defense. Boise State has allowed north of 70 points in just 2 out of their last 12 games after they gave up some points to New Mexico because they are just a incredible offense. And by the way, I'm talking regulation only with that regard. That takes out the game against Utah State with regards to 70 or fewer with Boise State, but you got a very top-heavy team, which that is a little bit concerning when you do go to a place like Colorado State. This is a bunch, though, that has been able to get a lot out of Max Rice, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point for a Boise State team that they're still outside the top 125 with regards to points scored on a per-possession basis. But how about Omar Stanley and the way that he has really been able to burst out? He is currently in road/shoot court environment, averaging 16 points, 7.5 boards, shooting 40% from 3. He actually plays his best when he's away from Boise. You've got Tyson Dagenhart being able to give you about 15.5 points per contest, but the problem that Boise State is going to be facing is that this is a Colorado State team that they just find a way to be able to generate points. This Boise State team is a top 75 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but for Colorado State, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're 17th in all of college basketball, generating 10.2 points more per 100 possessions when they are at home rather than in a road/shoot court environment. Now, for what Colorado State does great on offense, they do lag on defense, and for Colorado State, they're giving up 3.2 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/shoot court environment, but Colorado State does not beat themselves. Only about 10.2 turnovers per contest, with Isaiah Stevens supplying 7 assists, 16.5 points, shooting 44.5% from 3, and it's a battle of a really good perimeter defense against a good perimeter offense of Colorado State, which each of your top 3 scorers are shooting north of 42.5% from 3-point range. You've had Nikwe Clifford, along with Patrick Cartier, combined for about 26 points per contest. They're combined to shoot about 45% from 3-point range, with 4.5 assists per contest as well. Boise State should be able to win this battle down low. Colorado State, while outside the top 100 with regards to rebound rate once again, but Joel Scott, him being able to just give you a little bit of everything. A steal, a block, 12 points, 5.5 rebounds. He's been very big for this team, and I do think that for Boise State, you do have to fear a little bit of a letdown after the last time they went on the road. They had that big win against New Mexico. This is a Colorado State team that they just continue to get their offense going. This team has been able to get to at least 73 points in now 5 out of their last 6 games. Meanwhile, this is a Boise State team that all of a sudden they do give up that 78 spot to New Mexico. It is a team that has been a little bit different with their defense on the road, though their offense has been pretty consistent, as this is a Boise State team that now has been able to get to at least 72 points in each of their last 4 games. So very interesting spot here. I do think that things slow down Colorado State well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, but I also think that this is close enough for late game filling. So I did set my total 143.5. I'm looking at the over, and at 5 or less, willing to lay it with Colorado State, 6 or more. Take for me on Boise State, 651, 652 on the betting board. South Florida plays those of Charlotte. Charlotte is an underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Totals between 134 to 134.5. I did set my total 131.5. I'm looking at the under. South Florida is a top 150 team with regards to total possessions per game, but they're a top 85 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Charlotte back outside the top 320 with regards to total possessions per game. Now, for Charlotte, this team has now given up at least 70 points in 3 out of their last 5 games, but one of those games was against Rice. It did go to overtime, and for Charlotte, they are now building off of an 8-game win streak with Lucille Patterson being really good in this run. He and Igor Milicic have been your main 2 guys. With Patterson, he's your main floor general with about 3 assists, a steal, 14.5 points per contest, while Milicic cleans things up down low, 13 points, 8 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3, but also Deshaun Jackson teaming up with Milicic for 2.5 blocks per contest. That has been quite instrumental as well, but I do think that South Florida is going to be able to bring a end to this run. I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for South Florida. Their 3-point shooting numbers are very misleading. Overall for the season, they're shooting 35.3% from 3-point range, but through the first month of the season, they were shooting about 26% from 3. They were getting incredibly unlucky. From December on, since that game against Florida State, they're shooting about 40% from 3-point range, with Chris Youngblood now shooting 40% from 3, along with Celton Miguel shooting 43% from distance. These two guys have been able to combine for about 29 points per contest with the Charlotte team. They do a relatively solid job of being able to guard the arc, but sometimes they can be a little bit wobbly with that regard as well. It's a Charlotte team that is allowing opponents to shoot 28.5% from 3-point range at home, closer to about 31.5% in a roadside shoot corner environment. Meanwhile, this South Florida team, they've done a really nice job of being able to shut down the arc as well. Opponents are shooting 31.7% from 3-point range against them, so I do think that both of these teams are going to struggle a little bit more than normal from the outside. For South Florida, the question becomes, can they do a solid job down low? Kashawn Pryor, he's given you about 7 boards, 12.5 points per game, and has really been able to do a nice job down low recently, but he's one of just 3 guys on the roster that do give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, but South Florida has been able to do an okay job by committee of rebounding. They're about 189th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Charlotte is about 170th, so both of these teams do play even up, but this has been a Charlotte team that's had some inconsistencies when they've left home. Their rebound rate is more around 47 when they're on the road. Charlotte is giving up about 9 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment rather than when they are at home. And this is a South Florida team that I just really like the current form that they're in. For South Florida, they have now given up 72 points for fear in each of their last 5 games. I do think that this game gets slowed down. I do think that both of these teams do a good job of being able to guard the arc. So I told 131 after diving under, but I do think that with South Florida having Pryor taking things over down low and the team overall just shooting better in general, I'm going to be willing to take a look at this total under, and I'm going to be looking at South Florida laying the number. 653, 654 on the betting board. Nevada is on the road, and they're playing against Utah State. Utah State is a favorite of 6 points. Your total on this game, it is 150.5. With Utah State, I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. So here at the 6, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Nevada. Nevada really doesn't do anything flashy. They just do a nice job of being able to take hold and just not hurting themselves. Nevada in the top 35 in all of college basketball with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. As a collective, they shoot just below 75% at the free throw line. Nevada does a good job of being able to guard the arc, allowing opponents to shoot just 31.8% from 3-point range. And they're going up against a Utah State team that, in their own right, they've been able to do a lot of this as well. They've got a feature guy in Great Osabor that should be able to win the battle down low for Utah State as well. They're 8th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, with Osabor chipping in there 15 points, 9 plus boards per contest. If you take a look at this Utah State team, they only shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range, actually closer to about 32.5 to 33% from 3-point range, yet they rank 36th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and Logan is just flat out a tough place to play. Utah State averaging about 13 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment, but even though Nevada doesn't have like a supreme rebound rate, they're about 145th in all of college basketball. They do a good job with regards to their defensive rebounding. They don't allow you to get a second chance on offense. Meanwhile, they themselves don't grab a lot of offensive rebounds for second and third chances of their own right, though Utah State is the better rebounding team here at 31st in all of college basketball. But Nick Davidson has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, and Jared Lucas might be the best scoring guard in this game, being able to provide Nevada with about 18 points per game. Now, what I will say about Utah State is they've got the most efficient player out there on the floor. That would be Darius Brown. He gives you a little bit over 10 points per contest, shooting darn near 40% from 3, and his assist-to-turnover ratio is in the neighborhood of 5. He has been absolutely tremendous at being able to dole out the ball for this Utah State team. And then on top of that, you've got someone like an Ian Martinez who's able to give you 13.5 points, shooting 42.5% from 3-point range. But I do think that Nevada, even though it's been a little bit herky-jerky with them recently, I do think that they're going to be able to hold in there. This has been a Nevada team that's been having a few rough goes of it on the road, giving up north of 70 points each of their last 3 games on the road. But for Utah State, this is a bunch that, even though they haven't been able to get to 80 in so many different games, that was busted up against San Diego State, but still, this team has been able to get to 80-plus points in Utah State in all but 2 of their games since January. In the other game, they got to 77, but I do think that Nevada finds a way to be able to slow them down. That has just been the way that Nevada has been operating all season long. I set my total out of 145. I do think that Nevada does a good job of being able to cut off the arc, and really both of these teams have a little bit of a brick-laying expose. So I'm going to be looking at the under in this spot, and here at this number, I'm going to be willing to take Nevada, set them as a underdog of 5 points. 655, 656 on the betting board. Minnesota plays us Michigan State. Michigan State is a road favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. So on this game is 139. Michigan State has been a very inconsistent team all season long, going up against a Minnesota bunch that is number one in the country with regards to overall cover rate. They've covered all but 3 of their games thus far this season. I did, though, set Michigan State as a 3.5 point favorite. 3 is the max I'd be willing to lay with Michigan State here, but I'm willing to lay a 3. This Michigan State team does a very solid job of being able to knock down their outside shots. If you look at things ever since the Baylor game, this team has been shooting about 40% from 3, with Ty Walker supplying 19 points, 2 steals, 3 assists, shooting 39% from 3-point range. Now, for this Michigan State team, they have to do a good job of being able to force just a few turnovers and a little bit of pressure on Elijah Hawkins. Hawkins is right now leading all of college basketball with regards to assists per game. He has really cut down on the turnovers as well, as when he was over at Howard a season ago, he led all qualifying D1 players with 4 turnovers per game. He's now given out 7.8 assists to 2.8 turnovers, shooting 36.5% from 3 with 9 points per contest. So that has been very instrumental to this team's success. For Michigan State, they have been able to have Mandy Sissoko be able to give you in that neighborhood of about 6 rebounds per game, but they don't necessarily have that one true low post presence like Minnesota does, and Dawson Garcia was able to give you 16 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game. But this is a Michigan State team I think is going to do a solid job on the glass. They're about 140th with regards to rebound rate. Minnesota, it's more around 56th, but this is a Minnesota team that they can get a little bit careless. They still turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest outside of Dawson Garcia. It's a lot of guys that you just don't know who night in, night out is going to be able to help you out. Pharrell Payne, Cam Christie, Mike Mitchell, Joseph Allah Joseph, they all combine for about 40 points per contest, closer to 41 points per contest, with Christie, Mitchell, along with Joseph, shooting between 37.8 and 40.5% from 3. And there's no question about it. This Minnesota team has been significantly better when they've been at home rather than in a road/court environment. For Minnesota, this team is 48th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, allowing 19.9 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a road/court environment, while Michigan State, they have been giving up about 20 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, actually closer to 22 points with Michigan State. But the Spartans team has done a very good job bearing down with their defense. Last time these two teams played, Michigan State got the win, and they were able to do a solid job of holding down Minnesota by kind of 76-66. And for that matter, this Michigan State team, they have now allowed 71 points or fewer in 7 out of their last 8 games. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a lower scoring slog going up against a Minnesota team that they themselves have now scored 66 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. So I do like Michigan State to go on the road, get the job done in a little bit of a lower scoring affair. I did set my total on 139.5, and the big reason why I do think that this is close enough for late game fouling. Last time these two teams played, Michigan State, they were able to get to 76 in that game. That was 76-66, and I think the game script is pretty similar here. So I did set my total 139.5. At the 139, it's the max I'm willing to go over on, but I'm willing to go over, and I'm willing to lay up to 3 with Michigan State. 657, 658 on the betting board. Baylor plays host to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech is a 6-point underdog. Your total is 146. I did set Texas Tech as an underdog of 5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the 6 with Baylor. This team has been very inconsistent with their 3-point shooting. They were the best 3-point shooting team out of conference in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, in conference, this team has been hitting quite a bit of a cooler, as for Baylor, in conference, they are shooting less than 32.5% from 3-point, still shooting overall for the season about 48.8% from the outside, with Jacoby Walter, Ray J. Dennis combined for about 28 points per contest. Dennis has been able to chip in there about 6 assists per game, and it is a Baylor team that is still a top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and the defensive efficiency for Baylor is just so much better in Waco, allowing opponents 17.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/court environment. And for Texas Tech, you know that Graham McCaslin is always going to be able to play some tough, rough and tumble defense for Texas Tech. They've actually been a little bit more of an offensive team, though, as they do allow about 17.7 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. But the team has been able to do a really good job of just executing in general on offense. 23rd in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Pop Isaacs has been that main guy with about 17.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest, even though he doesn't shoot it well from 3. The ancillary pieces, like a Darion Williams, like Chance McMillan, they're combined to shoot about 41.5% from 3. Williams and McMillan have combined 19 points per contest. With Williams, he's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. And for Baylor, you've got Yves Massey down low, a 7-footer that's able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. And he's been instrumental in why Baylor has actually been a relatively good team on the glass. Baylor 29th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. Texas Tech, though, they've got a 7-footer in Warren Washington. They themselves have been able to do a pretty solid job of holding up in the painted area and on the glass. They're about 128th in the country with regards to rebound rate, but it has been building up in Big 12 play. You've been able to get quite a bit out of Joe Toussaint as well, with about 4 assists per contest. contest, and it's a Texas Tech team that, though they've been a little bit all over the place in terms of their defense, they've now given up 75 plus in each of their last 5 games. They face off against a Baylor team that, it has been very wishy-washy with regards to their offense as well. This team in regulation, because they played that game against TCU that went to triple overtime, which we just throw out the mix in general because that was just such a strange outlier. That's not even funny, but in games that have not went to triple overtime, they've been held to 74 points or fewer in 4 out of their last 5 games. So I do think that this is a very interesting circumstance. I do think the Texas Tech is going to be able to pick it up defensively just a little bit, but at the same time, this is a Texas Tech team that is a little bit more offensive based this season. I do think that they're going to take advantage of a Baylor team that, while they have been significantly better with regards to their defense when they've been at home, they are allowing opponents to shoot about 33% from 3. That's about 128th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, this is a Texas Tech team that they do give up the arc quite a bit, 229th in the country. So I did set my total at a 147. I'm looking over, and at north of 5, taking the points with Texas Tech. 659, 660 on the betting board. San Jose State plays us to Fresno State. Fresno State, an underdog of 2 points. Totals between 140 and 142.5. I did set my total at a 141, mostly seeing 141 to 142. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under in this ordeal. We've got a pair of teams that are well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. Now, for both of these teams, they have been pretty awful at being able to guard the 3-point line, as Fresno State is outside the top 330 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, San Jose State, 356th in all of college basketball. And this is a Fresno State team that has improved with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Isaiah Hill has been able to give you 5 assists, 12 points per contest. He's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range. You bring in Xavier DeSalle with his 10 points. He comes over from Wyoming. He's been relatively solid from 3-point range. And for San Jose State, even though this is a very top-heavy team, to say the least, you've got 4 guys that are able to do a really good job for the team. Trey Anderson, along to Beck Gronair, have both been able to combine for about 27.5 points per contest, both shooting the high 30s from 3-point range with some size. Alvaro Cardenas has been your main facilitator, 6 assists to fewer than 2 turnovers per game. He's been able to supply the team with 13 points per contest. And then Myron Amy, he's been your main scorer, 15.5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists per contest. For a San Jose State team that they only turn the ball over about 10.5 points per contest. And then you've got the gentleman from Senegal, 7-footer Adrame Diongue, who's been able to do a solid job being able to give you about a block and a half per contest. You just don't quite have that with Fresno State, though. Anyak Boyaki, along with Eduardo Andre 3000, they've been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game. But that said, this is a San Jose State team that, just with their ability to take care of the ball, while Fresno State turns the ball over 14 times per contest, that gives them a big leg up with regards to their offense. San Jose State, 154th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Fresno State, 218th. And for Fresno State, those turnovers, they really rear their ugly head when they're on the road. 18.8 points fewer scored per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot scoring environment rather than when they are at home, with them being a little bit top heavy, though Isaiah Pope has been able to step up, giving you about 9 points per contest. He's been able to shoot about only 31% for 3 after last season. Shot more around 42.5% from distance at Utah Tech. I do think that San Jose State goes home and they're able to get the job done in a game that is going to be relatively low possession. I do think that the overall execution for San Jose State is going to be better than that of a Fresno State team that has failed to get past the 70-point plateau in 4 out of their last 5 games. So a circumstance where I saw my total at 141 here out of the 142, looking under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 points with San Jose State. Made them a 3-point favorite, 661, 662 on the board. Air Force plays us to San Diego State. San Diego State is a 10 to a 10.5 point favorite. Your total between 133.5 and 134. I did set Air Force as an underdog of 9 points, so I'm going to be willing to take those points. It is a San Diego State team that has done a great job of guarding the arc. Top 35 team in all of college basketball in this regard, and it's an Air Force team that has some very strange home and road splits. Typically, you'd think that Air Force would get a big giant boost from being at home, but they're actually averaging 1.9 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court environment, and they're giving up 1.2 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home as well. But this is also a San Diego State defense that's not the same when they do leave home. This is a San Diego State team that's giving up 16.9 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shoot court environment, though Air Force is outside the top 200 with regards to the rebound rate. Their top 5 scorers, you've got 4 of them giving you at least 4.5 rebounds per game, including the versatility of Ethan Taylor, who's been able to give you 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, about 3 assists, shoots 39.5% from 3, and Ryan Petraeus, Bo Becker, they combine to shoot 40% from the outside, with both giving you between 15 and 16 points per contest. for San Diego State, it has been the Jaden Ledee show. 20.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's able to chip in there a little bit over his steal per contest. He's now shooting about 38.5% from three-point range. He has been the constant for the team all season long, but you need a little bit more out of those guys that brought you to the national title game a season ago. Lamont Butler, Darion Trammell, they're combining to shoot less than 30% from three. 17.5 points, 5.5 assists to about 2.5 turnovers between the two of them. It's really been Reese Dixon Waters who has stepped up in the backcourt, shooting 42% from three, 12 points per contest. But for San Diego State, they're only shooting as a collective about 32.5% from the outside. You'd think it would be a little bit better for the team. Micah Parrish has been able to do a solid job. I'll be able to supply the team with some offense, but for San Diego State, they're overall about 98th in the country with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They've done a nice job knifing it inside, and I really do like what I'm seeing out of this Jay Powell guy as well. He comes in from Campbell. He has seen limited minutes throughout the season, but in that game against Utah State, they finally let him run loose. He went for 16 points, 7 boards. I do anticipate him seeing some more minutes moving forward, and I think that that's a good thing, as I think that he's been underutilized all season long. Meanwhile, it is a San Diego State team that they actually do shoot a little bit better from three-point range when they are away from home. That said, I do think that this environment in general, it's going to take it out of the San Diego State team a little bit more with Air Force. They're one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. And San Diego State, still a top 75 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Did semi-total 131, looking under, and at north of 9, taking the points with Air Force. And we're going to have things up with 663, 664 on the board. It is St. Mary's on the road facing off against Pacific. Pacific, an underdog of 21.5 points. Totals between 129 and 129.5. I'm seeing a 130 out there as well, and going to be looking at the under. I set my total at a 129, as last time these two teams played, it was about 2 weeks ago. Pacific did not reach 30 points against St. Mary's. I am not kidding. They scored 29 points, I believe, in that game. Might have been 28, but they did not reach 30. That was absolutely sad and pathetic, and this St. Mary's team is just mauling teams on defense. It doesn't matter if it's at home, it doesn't matter if it's on the road, or if it's in Planet Pluto. They are third in the country with regards to opponents' points allowed on a per-possession basis, and this Pacific team has nothing going for them. St. Mary's guards the interior, they guard the exterior. They're one of the best teams in the country in terms of not giving you a second chance opportunity, and for Pacific, they don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Judson Martindale with a 7.3 points per contest leads the way on offense, and for Pacific, they're shooting 63.5% the free throw line, 31.5% from three-point range, while turning the ball over a little bit over 12 times per contest. If you look at total points scored on a per possession basis, this Pacific team is 341st in all of college basketball. Now, the St. Mary's offense certainly has had its warts throughout the season as well. Even though they won against Gonzaga, they only scored 64 points in that game. But prior to that Gonzaga game, this team had been able to get to at least 70 points in 5 straight games. It's coming along for them. Ada Mahaney has been able to give you 14.5 points, now shooting back in the mid-30s from three-point range. Even though St. Mary's shot making has been a little bit suspect, they're only turning the ball over 10.5 times per contest. Mitchell Saxon, Joshua Jefferson, they were able to combine for about 14.5 rebounds per game. Alex Dusas has been a little bit down this year with 5 boards, 8.5 points per game, but he's still shooting 37.5% from three-point range. He's been playing better recently as well. This is the St. Mary's team that's currently on a 10-game winning streak. This is a Pacific team that, man, they just have not been able to get a lot going with regards to their offense. Whenever they played San Francisco, they played them tough, but after the last time, they scored 28 points against the St. Mary's team, and with the way that St. Mary's is just absolutely mauling teams. They had one little hiccup against Santa Clara, but that's that. This is a bunch of, they have now given up 70 points or fewer in all but one out of their last, I believe, 14 games. I did think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog that St. Mary's just dominates once again. I said St. Mary's as a 23-point favorite. We'll lay the number. So my total 129, so also looking under, and that wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Seeps, now part of the VSiN family podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Seeps, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, think about idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @Jaden_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and other ways find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season, and that means I'm coming at you once again about. Thank you so much for tuning
in. It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables. Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft, pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.